You're watching GCTV, Community Access Cable Channel 15 in Greenfield, Massachusetts.
All of our productions at GCTV are sponsored in part by Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it, close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. Visit them at gcc.mass.edu. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. Real Cleaning Services, cleaning Hampshire and Franklin County since 1972. We don't cut corners, we clean them. Check them out online at realclean.com. Call them at 413-422-1143. People's United Bank, located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. The Solar Store of Greenfield, replacing fossil fuels and nuclear power one home at a time. Visit them at 23 Fisk Ave. Call them at 413-772-3122 or visit them online at solarstoreofgreenfield.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all of GCTV's productions.
To the 195th regular meeting of the Greenfield City Council on July 17th at the John Zon Community Center. This meeting is being recorded, videotaped, and broadcast. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify me at this time. Could you tell me where you're from? Yes. From the Advocate? Okay, so, the Advocate is here. Roll call.
Councilor Sun.
Here.
Councilor Burson.
Present.
Councilor Alice.
Present.
Councilor Pifram. Here. Councilor Dolan.
Here.
Councilor Gilmore. Here. Councilor Wheeler.
Here.
Councilor Mayo.
Here.
Councilor Hirschfeld.
Here.
Councilor Mass.
Here.
Vice President Ricketts.
Here.
Councilor Stemple. President Renault.
Here. And now we're going to have a Pledge of Allegiance. This is voluntary. Is there a motion to approve the June 17th and June 27th, 2019 City Council meeting minutes? Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Do we have communications from the Superintendent of Schools and/or School Committee?
Hi everyone, we have a special guest visitor today joining us. Would you like to say hello?
You don't have to. Okay. Thanks everybody, I'll jump right in. First off, thank you so much for moving our report ahead of the public comment. It's really helpful to us and we appreciate that. At the committee, we have made a few changes to some of our meeting procedure. Some of these changes have been modeled after the council's rules of procedure. So we've set some limits on deliberation, and this is in order to help the flow of our meetings. As well, in order to ensure that all members are informed and engaged in budget deliberations and anything related to finance matters, we've opted to proceed as a committee of the whole when deliberating on budget items. And we are in the process right now of scheduling several special meetings to address deliberation on a modified FY20 budget. So we are all eager to dive right into that. The committee has ratified the administrative assistance contract, and the first reading, I believe, for contract stabilization is before you today. We wholeheartedly support and request your approval on that topic. As well, the committee continues deliberations with Unit C and Unit A. And as you know, also, funding for a heater at the Green River School building is on your agenda today. This is necessary for us to be able to open that building, and we very much request your support for this funding so that we can move forward with utilizing that building space, and so that we do not jeopardize any funding that we have received from the MSBA. Superintendent.
So good evening. I brought my mini-me to the meeting tonight. I wanted to share some good news that we received from Governor Baker, a $60,000 grant to the Greenfield Public Schools for the purpose of improving safety and security. This has been...
That's the best thing I've seen all day.
Read so they can hear me. This is going to be fun. The safety and security grant will be used for keying doors and entries and some of our interior.
She can have mine.
Jacked. So we're really excited about that grant. And that will be supplemental to the capital request that went through. We actually pulled capital requests. We pulled capital requests, so this doesn't duplicate anything that was in capital, and we opted to go for the grant funds for those because we felt that we had a good bid, and we're glad that that was successful. We are in summer school right now, and that is going well. We have the high school, the Academy of Early Learning, and Newton School, our summer school locations, and so we are in summer mode right now, and we're planning for the fall. We have had a fair amount of staff turnover as we are preparing for the fall. We're working with the school committee to bring forward a clear and final budget because so much of our budget is in staffing. Our final numbers obviously go before the school committee for approval, and we expect to have that final budget done in the fall, but we are very grateful to the additional funding that the council was able to provide to maintain our critical staffing as we head into the start of the school year.
Chair Nunez and Superintendent, I have a question about the Green River School. Just what are the plans now that we're looking at the approving the funding for the heating?
So the school committee vote on the Great Schools program is still in place. But I do anticipate considerable deliberation on the use of the Green River School building as we head into conversation about our modified budget for the FY20 year. We, again, as I mentioned earlier, we can't do anything with that building until there is heat in that building. So we very much need there to be heat in the building as a preliminary step. As well, there is a lot of consideration for funding. I know that with the reduction in the FY20 budget, we will definitely need to review our plans for that building.
Just as a follow-up, do you have any idea when we might be able to know for sure what the use of the school will be?
So the timing of the heating system is for opening the building in the fall of 2020, so not this coming fall, but next fall. So over the course of the next school year, we'll bring forward to the school committee any changes since the last proposal. So, for example, we've had a growing enrollment at the elementary level, and we've seen new trends in terms of rising enrollment in the Greenfield Public Schools. So that may be an additional consideration in how we would now use the Green River space, and those would need to come before the committee. I would say that January is our target to have finalized plans so that we can communicate well in advance of the following fall.
Thank you. And just one other question, which I don't expect an answer tonight, but maybe it's something that you could come back to us with an answer to. Some time ago, we had talked about the Greenfield Public Schools collaborating more with our charter school in town, and I'm just wondering if anything has started or taken root, or if you want to answer that question at another meeting, that's something we could talk about.
I'd be happy to talk specifically about any collaboration efforts at another time.
Okay, that sounds good. Councilor Burson.
Is there any conversation contemplated between the committee of the Greenfield Public Schools and the other schools in the counties about any consolidation, sharing of services, given the declining enrollments throughout the county?
At this time, there hasn't been any formal conversation, certainly not with the school committee and neighboring school committees. However, there are opportunities for discussion on such items that occur oftentimes at conferences like the Massachusetts Association of School Committees annual conference. There was a significant amount of conversation related to regionalization that occurred at last year's conference, and really representatives from all over the region were in the room for that conversation. And so there are other collaborative meetings that are occurring between the superintendent and other individuals and entities. But again, at the committee level, we haven't had any formal conversations. With that being said, I think it's important to recognize that the enrollment at the Greenfield Public Schools is not declining. I know that our neighbors are experiencing declining enrollment. However, the Greenfield Public Schools is not experiencing the same changes in our enrollment.
I just wanted to add to that, Councilor Burson. We really look for opportunities to collaborate. So on the superintendent level, I've reached out to a number of the area districts to find ways that we can collaborate. Some districts their committees have made decisions about ways that they want to explore collaborating with neighboring districts. And I think at this point we are in the process of setting sort of the vision and the goals for this coming year. For me personally, a priority will be looking closely at this question of where can we best reduce costs, share services with neighboring districts. We always look at it with the city and with neighboring districts. But I think as the county seat, we have an opportunity, and I think that there are ways. One way that we're doing this really well right now is by transportation. So our transportation efforts in the Greenfield Public Schools, we've actually established routes that are saving Greenfield money, but other school districts have a way to participate and actually cost share into our transportation. It's a cost savings to them, but it's a cost savings to us. So that's one really good thing. You've seen the vans about town. That's working really well right now. And we look for other opportunities like that, which means that the dollars that we do have stay invested in the classroom.
Well, for my part, if you don't do it, the state is going to tell you how to do it.
Councilor Mass?
Thank you, Madam President. I have two questions. One is, what I heard about the Green River School is that you're exploring opportunities for elementary at that location. Does that mean you have abandoned the idea of putting an alternative high school or middle school level program at that facility for students who are learning in different ways? What we had been discussing a year ago, is that plan off the table of taking kids who tend to have discipline problems and have other special needs related to what they're experiencing at the high school and putting them at the Green River School? Is that off the table?
I believe what the chair said is that that vote stands. So the most recent vote of the committee was to support that proposal. Having said that, it was prior to the FY20 budget deliberations, and the positions needed for that alternative program, even though modest, were new positions. And so we were looking to retain existing staff before adding new. That means that at this point, as part of the budget discussion, we have to say, one, what is within the budget, and two, are there other needs that are more pressing? So I don't want to get ahead of the committee deliberation on this. I think that keeping a strong alternative program, which is very much needed, has to be part of the discussion. It's possible that the committee wants to just stick with that. And it's also possible that we could locate a small alternative program at the high school and still use Green River for an alternative purpose. Some ideas that have been discussed at the committee level are having a nursery program for Greenfield Public Schools employees, possibly town employees, that feed into our Academy of Early Learning, in addition to some alternative educational programming for elementary students, sort of more innovative programming for our elementary students. So there's a lot of options there. Again, those programmatic decisions are very much with the school committee, so we'll be working with them. But our timeline depends on heating first. So our goal is to open a strong program in the fall of next year.
My second question, I think you're prepared for it because I emailed you about it, and it's related to the Math and Science Academy at the Greenfield Middle School. My understanding is, I don't know if anyone signed up for so far this year. I know last year that at this point in the year, I don't believe any fifth grade students had signed up, and then about 8 at the beginning of the school year. And so there were more kids who were in that program that had not elected to be in that program than chose to. And I know it, speaking from my own experience, it's caused some social discord within the middle school. Do you know where you stand on making decisions about the continuance of the Math and Science Academy at the middle school, and what the timeline for those decisions are if they haven't been made?
So the first thing is that we know that STEM and STEAM programs are really important, and we want to continue to expand programs that give students access to math, science, and the arts, especially at the middle school level. We also know that our arts and enrichment programs at the middle school are tremendously popular, and one of the challenges with the Math and Science Academy as it was structured is that students sometimes felt they had to choose between some of the tremendous offerings in terms of music and arts and band and theater, and taking additional math and science classes. And for a lot of students, they really opted for some of those enrichment programs. We have engaged in the last year in a turnaround plan at the middle school. And right now, that plan, with the support of 16 educators, the middle school leadership, and district leadership, has gone to the state. It's not gone yet to the school committee because it's still being reviewed in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And then that plan will be enacted. What the teachers are recommending is a modification that allows us to encourage STEM and encourage math and science, but shift the schedule so that we can save resources, cut down on some of the redundancies in staffing, and better align the students so we don't have those same rifts. So it will look a little different in the fall, and we don't expect the same programmatic choice between one track or another, if you will. At the same time, we expect to offer a lot of math and science acceleration and enrichment offerings.
Thank you.
Councilor Dolan?
I just wanted to follow up quickly on our budget meeting in the spring and kind of the consequences of the funding that the schools did not receive. I know there was at least one layoff at the middle school. Were there others layoffs of existing staff?
I will tell you that this is very much in flux because of the number of staff and the amount that this is tied up in specific personnel matters. We worked very hard to preserve existing positions, which meant that we tried to eliminate positions where there was already a retirement or already somebody leaving. So to a very large extent, we minimized the impact of actual cuts to existing people in positions. Having said that, it doesn't minimize the impact to the amount of services that we're able to deliver. One thing we saw for sure is that There was a lot of uncertainty in the budget process, and we've had a greater number of staff turnover in this year than we've experienced in any of the past 5 years that I've been here. And folks are saying they love Greenfield and they want to be here, and they're leaving with the tears in their eyes and saying, I actually want to be here. This was my home away from home. So that has been a painful process for the principals in the buildings and for the educators. And so at this point, we're really working to send a clear message that we value our teachers, we value our instructional assistants, we want our custodians and our admin assistants to be here. Ratifying the admin assistant contract tonight will go a long way to giving them that message. And Chair Nunez is frustrated over here. And that's really where our focus has been. In a lot of areas, rather than going whole hog and saying, okay, well, we could save money by eliminating music at a school, we really felt that that was detrimental to students. We heard that from parents. We heard that from the council. We heard that from the school committee. So in a lot of areas, we tried to take a position that was full-time and make it part-time and keep the main services so that students would still get the opportunity, but save dollars. So we made a lot of efficiencies and cuts in small places, and then again, this is still back before the school committee, and then we'll bring the final budget back here.
I want to thank you both very much. We appreciate the work that you do and your leadership. It's not easy being in a rural community with the funding issues, and again, just thank you very much.
And last comment is, speaking of funding, is just obviously this final Chapter 70 number coming from the state still being up in the air is a big piece of why we're still trying to work to finalize what exactly does that look like.
Thank you. And we expect to see the Superintendent Junior at the meetings from now on.
Thanks very much.
Communications from the mayor, city officers, Lindsay, I don't know. I don't think anybody's here. No, okay.
The mayor's on vacation.
Very good. I just want to announce there is a seat over here next to the good pastor, Dave. So people looking for a chair, there's one up here. Okay, so could somebody please, Glenn, could you pass me the public comment sheet, the sign-up sheet? So this is how this is going to work. We have sheets that people have signed up on for public comment. I'm going to take a look at how many people have signed up. Thank you very much. Our meetings tend to be rather long, and we want to do a good job for you, so it's usually my job to try to assess how many people we have who want to speak. And looking at the room, it looks like there's probably people who didn't get a chance to sign up. So what we're going to do is I'm going to break it down to 2 minutes. Everybody's going to have 2 minutes to speak, and then if you didn't sign, and then we're going to have a phone, and it's going to buzz, and then I'm going to, hopefully I don't have to interrupt you, but if I do, I do. And I'm just going to ask you, when you hear the tone, just finish the sentence that you're on. That would be wonderful. And then we'll have, for those who didn't sign up, you can line up afterwards and have a lightning round of 1 minute each. But that way, we're not here for 2 hours during public comment. We really do want to hear what you have to say, but we have to do it, thank you, and in somewhat expedited way. So, good. All right, and please, if we could just keep the aisles clear per fire chief, that'd be wonderful. Okay, Ginny DeSouza, and please state your name and your address, even if I know you, which is most of you.
Hi, Ginny DeSouza, 43 Silvercrest Lane. I already wrote to all of you this week in support of the Safe City Ordinance. I just want to reiterate that I am in favor of that, and I urge you to listen to your constituents and pass that ordinance. Secondly, you have several capital improvements to be taken from the table and voted on tonight. If you want GSET to succeed as I do, I urge you to appropriate the $150,000 that they are requesting for the telecommunication equipment. Every month at these meetings, you have heard, as I have, that they are continually increasing the number of subscribers and their build-out. They can't do that build-out without the equipment. The capital improvements that you tabled for water and sewer are putting our drinking water, our wetlands, and our rivers at risk. The $675,000 for the Leiden Woods pump station was put off last year. It had recent failures, one that caused sewer discharge into the nearby wetlands and a stream. You cut I&I last year and have tabled it again this year. Inflow and infiltration improvements are not something that we can see. They need to be done so that the wastewater treatment system is not overwhelmed. Anything else is short-sighted. The $600,000 for the replacement of the water meters that are well past their life expectancy is necessary and will save the taxpayers money. Flint, Michigan ignored evidence and deferred maintenance. Greenfield is better than that. Please do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Nielsen.
Tom Nielsen, 37th Solar Way. I've worked a few years under the umbrella of the U.S. State Department and the United Nations, most of those in Africa, a few more in South America. State Department has a travel advisory list, tells you what countries aren't safe to travel in. The most dangerous country is Nigeria. The second one is Honduras. And they use the words rape, extortion, drug and human trafficking, stealing, assault, and of course the obvious, killing. They don't want you to go there, but people who might not be in favor of the Safe City Ordinance want people to stay there and go through the channels of doing the paperwork, which I know is important to you. But you remember 10 years ago when Obama and Hillary overthrew the Hernan Zelaya government, Hernandez came in with the death squads. And quite honestly, people don't have time to do the paperwork. Berta Cáceres didn't have time to do it. Hernan Garcia and thousands of environmentalists and human rights workers. Pueblos Modelos in Guatemala, Phoenix Program in Salvador, Contra Mercenaries in Nicaragua, bombing Panama, a fabricated drug war in Colombia. How long do we pay for this violence without accepting the responsibility for the human consequences of it? In the early 70s, I was living in Colombia in South America. And in 1973, I was on my way to Chile to be with my very dear friend Marta. But the CIA and Henry Kissinger got there before I did, and Marta, along with thousands of others, was disappeared, and I never heard from her again. She didn't have time to do the paperwork. Pablo Neruda was killed at home. Victor Jara in the stadium. They didn't have time for the paper. And I know the law, being legal, is important. And that, yes, law is important. Women broke the law to get the right to vote. Stonewall broke the law for human rights. Union organizers broke the law to bring in the 8-hour day and the weekend. Nuremberg Principles mandates us to break the law to prevent or expose a greater crime. It was against the law to walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Thank you, Tom. Sorry, I should have mentioned this sooner, but if you could please refrain from applauding or booing, just so that folks who may have an opinion, a minority opinion tonight, so that to prevent them from feeling badly. And also it keeps the meeting moving along. David Lewandowski.
Thank you for the opportunity to give a public comment. I know this being a special election year throughout our country, and the abortion issue is quite an issue during this election year, both locally, nationally, and statewide as well. There are state laws against destroying eagle eggs. It depends on the state, but it can be anywhere from $10,000 to $250,000 fine or 1 to 10 years in prison. But destroy the baby in the womb, there's no penalty. What's more important, a baby in the womb or an eagle egg? There's laws, fines, and imprisonment for destroying unborn turtles. but not for destroying unborn babies in the womb. What's more important and of value, the life of the unborn turtle or the life of an unborn baby that can feel excruciating pain when being aborted and destroyed? In Oregon, if you break a spotted owl egg, it's $250,000 fine. And the owl egg has no heartbeat, no nervous system, just an egg yolk. $250,000 fine to destroy it. But what about a baby that does have a heartbeat and a nervous system? If the right to murder children is protected by the right to privacy, then it would have to follow that our right to murder our children at birth or after birth or anyone at any age in private should be protected by the 14th Amendment. That would be the 14th Amendment, the right to privacy. Proverbs 6:17 says, God says he hates the act of those who shed innocent blood. These babies are innocent. God said through the prophet Isaiah, when you make many prayers, I will not hear you. Your hands are full of blood. Infanticide is an immoral outrage in our society, and God will not hear those prayers.
Thank you. And one other thing, if you could please remember to say your address too, even, I know your address, I know it.
David W. Dusty, 450 Greenfield, 450 Davis Street, Greenfield.
Thank you. Andy Fisk. So name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Fisk. I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut River Conservancy located at 15 Bank Row. I'm here tonight to speak and asking the council to keep on the table the $120,000 engineering study to repair the Wiley-Russell Dam. I have been partners with the folks that have sent a letter to you this week regarding this issue. Our position is that the city should return back to the position of removing the Wiley-Russell Dam and not move forward with expending in the near term council and public resources to repair a dam that you will then have to maintain forever. We worked with a number of organizations to advance the removal at the support of the mayor, and we believe that going back to removing that dam is the best fiscal course of action, as well as the best option to be able to interpret the historic legacy of the industrial and manufacturing heritage of Greenfield. Our organization is submitting to you that if you leave this issue on the table, we can continue to advance to the council a solution that will restore the Green River, which is an important resource for migratory fish, and will allow us to interpret successfully the industrial and manufacturing heritage of Greenfield. Our organization has removed, in the last 3 years, at the end of this field season, we will have removed 10 dams. We do this work routinely, we do it successfully, and we do it in communities where there is an important need to balance the public interest around the history of the community, as well as the cultural and ecological resources of rivers that have been dammed for prior industrial and economic development, whose purpose is no longer directly related to economic development. So I'd ask that you leave this item on the table and you provide my organization as well as the other partners an opportunity to come back to you to demonstrate that both of these values can be met.
Thank you. Alex Harrow.
Good evening. I'm Alex Harrow, 72 Hastings Street. I'm the one who wrote you the letter from this past month, and I won't repeat what Andy said. Most of what is in the letter is what he already said. But I would encourage every counselor to read the letter thoroughly, and especially toward the end of the letter, there are some graphical representations of what a dam removal could look like, some ideas for enhancing the historical and educational interpretation for the dam and its industrial heritage. These are the things that we think are important. In addition to removing the dam, there's some real positive benefits that can come out of it from a historical and educational perspective. So please really read the letter. If you have more questions for us, if you would like to get more information, have a presentation, and we have time if the item is still tabled, then we would be happy to provide that to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Jose Martinez. Jose Martinez.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por permitirme unas palabras.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for giving me the chance to say some words tonight.
Pues básicamente estoy aquí para pedirles a la comunidad un apoyo que no les costaría económicamente ningún gasto.
Basically, I'm here tonight to ask for a support that wouldn't cost not even 1 cent.
Es un tema muy complicado, el tema de comunidades seguras. Hacer Greenfield una comunidad segura para todos, no importando de dónde vienes.
It's an important and complex theme, making Greenfield a safe community for everyone, no matter where you are from.
Como ustedes saben, uno de los problemas más grandes que tiene la comunidad con ese tema es acerca de los niños.
As you all know, one of the biggest problems that we have regarding this issue is with children.
Niños que en muchas ocasiones tienen que quedarse al cuidado de extraños.
Children who in many cases have to stay in the care of people who are strangers to them.
Yo tengo fe en que todavía hay buena voluntad en el mundo y me gustaría pedirles que consideraran ese tema.
I believe that there is still goodwill in this world, and so I ask you to please consider voting on this issue.
Muchas gracias.
Voting yes on this issue. Thank you very much.
My address is 222 Federal Street, Greenfield, Massachusetts.
Thank you. Ellen Thompson.
Ellen Thompson, 54 High Street, even though I put 51. It's not going to be pretty. It's always been unlawful to harbor fugitives. So-called safe cities and sanctuary cities or states are a subversive way to create more lawlessness in this country. American citizens are held accountable for what illegals are being shielded from. This is insanity and anti-American. If you don't understand that, you'd better revisit your oaths to obey the Constitution. Every citizen in Massachusetts is paying greatly to lavish our money on these lawbreakers. I do not consent. It is time for every one of you who keep pushing these subversive, unconstitutional, and unlawful agendas to either resign or obey the Constitution. You each took an oath, and I can guarantee that most of you have no idea what our founding documents say, the documents that you trample on with impunity. In regard to the petition question, that's part of Amendment 1, and you have no right to make it more and more difficult for us, the people you serve, to object to your behavior. There's such a thing as a federal case being made out of things. Think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Pastor Heather.
Good evening, counselors. My name is Heather Blay, and I live at 73 Federal Street in Greenfield. I'm here tonight both as a resident of Greenfield and as one of the pastors serving the Episcopal Church of Saints James and Andrew. I'd like to speak in support of the Safe City Ordinance that you're considering bringing before City Council next week. 2 years ago, when Greenfield first considered becoming a safe city, our nation's political climate was quickly becoming hateful, volatile, and for many of our neighbors, dangerous. Some of our nation's elected officials have continued their fear-mongering and hate speech to attack immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. In so doing, it has given permission for any and everyone to treat others the same. We also see story after story about the abominable conditions where people are being detained on our southern border. We have a choice to make as a community. We can do nothing, or we can stand together. This is the moment for our community to stand together to ensure all people within the boundaries of our city know that they are welcomed, safe, and have the basic rights to report a crime without fear of deportation. In the Episcopal faith tradition, we promise in our baptism to respect the dignity of every human being. In choosing to become a safe city, we would be choosing to respect the worth of every single person within the borders of our city. Please consider bringing this ordinance before council next week. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't usually do this, but just a little bit of a clarification. We actually are voting on Safe City tonight. And the resolution, in case anybody's confused, to keep abortion safe and legal is next month. Because you don't have the advantage of having an agenda in front of you, but I do. So, Mary Ellen Preston.
Mary Ellen Preston, 390 Leiden Road in Greenfield. I'm the product of immigrants. And you know what? Every single other person sitting in this room is the product of some immigrant. My immigrant people happen to come from England, that side of the family, and that was longer before there were all kinds of restrictions. It was a little harder on my mother's side of the family when they came from Newfoundland. They came because they needed jobs. Those parents and grandparents, though, taught me that all people are equal and that we're all the same in the eyes of the Creator. I think they got fooled a little bit that they taught me better than they thought, because when I adopted a whole bunch of children, none of them looked exactly like me. Some of them didn't look at all like me. It took a few deep breaths. My family loved them. My community loved them. We were richer by that. My friends come in all sizes, shapes, and colors and religious persuasions. Any of us could be the person seeking comfort. Any of us could be the person coming. My family that came from Newfoundland came because they needed jobs. They could come through a process. They were not fearing rape, brutality, having their sons snatched to be put in militia. We have people who need us at this point. Who can we say no to?
Thank you. Catherine Goulab.
Good evening, councilors. Catherine Gola, Glenbrook Drive. So I want to first start by thanking Councilor Sun for meeting tonight and to address two important issues that I think that are points that we agree on. The first, Councilor Sun, you shared that you want everyone to be able to tell the truth. This ordinance would make it so that immigrants would be safe to tell the truth to the authorities without being forced to give information that would risk them being separated from their families. For instance, if an immigrant woman was being threatened by domestic violence, she'd be able to go to the authorities and tell the truth without risking having someone ask about her status. Or if a farm worker is struggling with substandard conditions, they would be safe to report that without fearing being asked if they had a visa. So we agree that immigrants should be able to tell the truth, and that is why I ask you all to vote yes on this Safe City Ordinance. And second, you shared a belief in Jesus, and as a person of faith, the question I'm asking myself tonight is, honestly, what would Jesus do tonight? How would Jesus vote on this ordinance? And having been raised with stories of how Jesus stood with poor and most disenfranchised of his time, I believe that if Jesus was here tonight with us, he would implore every one of us to do everything in our power to stand with our immigrant neighbors during this time of great need. And that is why I ask you to have the courage to do the right thing and to vote yes on this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Burge.
Maria Burge, 29 Garfield Street, Greenfield. Well, here we go again. A couple of years ago, I sat where you're sitting there, and I had to make a decision to vote yes or no. My decision, although misunderstood by many folks, was not necessarily what my heart was feeling. I am a Mexican American, born and raised in the United States. I have served my country, I have served my community, yet my family is in fear for me. I cannot go, I do not have their blessing to go and do my mission work out of this country. When I do go out of this country, I want to bring everybody back because they deserve a better life. I am not here to say vote for it or vote against it. I'm here to say listen to your heart and listen to the reasons why you are voting for this, whichever way you go. I am concerned about many things, especially putting the spotlight in Greenfield, because you are not going to stop ICE. Are you giving me a false sense of security by calling us a safe city? I cannot hide the color of my skin, and I have been stopped before and asked, where are you from? Where are you going? What are you doing here? So if you don't think I know what these folks are going through, I'm sorry. Hey, perfect timing. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Garrett Conley.
Garrett Connolly, 84 Congress Street, Greenfield. There's so many subjects we're talking about tonight that limiting it to 2 minutes is a pretty extraordinary thing. In fact, the first 30 seconds, I want to speak to all of you. We need a new form of government. Representative democracy represents capital. We need something new, something that can evolve, something for the future. We need a constituent assembly that can organize all the people from the source to the sea, to bring all of the people together to find out what should we do, because we can't say it in 2 minutes. Now, the failure of representative democracy is right here in front of our eyes. You wonderful people have presided over the conversion of Greenfield into a strip mall using representative democracy. Now, We're fighting representative democracy that represents capital, that brings possibly more sales tax in, but we, the people, have to pay with property tax. This is a complicated issue, and I know I'm going to run over for my 2 minutes, and you just call me and I'll stop. But remember when our state government, another representative democracy, decided that we should buy a pipeline for Kinder Morgan? Remember? They were going to have us pay for the pipeline for Kinder Morgan. That was a representative democracy, our state government, representing capital. Okay, so here we are. We've got all these issues, and we've got to come together now, and we want safe. We know that the United States is basically a terrorist nation that goes to the south, destroys democracies, and chases people to the north.
Garrett, your time is up.
All right. You see what I mean? 2 minutes won't cover it at all.
Joanna Whitney.
Joanna Whitney, 112 Franklin Street. I am speaking tonight to urge you to vote in support of Safe Cities. It's kind of an emotional issue for me because the issue of immigration and refugee status is something that's been deeply bound into my family history. My earliest immigrant ancestors came in the early 17th century from England, when it was deeply dangerous to be Catholic in that country. Since then, generation after generation, there have been people coming to this country to get away from violence in their home. In my lifetime, my earliest memory is of people that my family took in who've come from other countries seeking safety, oftentimes younger people, because when countries fall apart, people try to get their kids out first. When my family lived in Florida, church groups took in young people coming from Cuba and other parts of Central and South America where the countries were unsafe and their families were trying to get their children to safety. And families would take those children in until there was an opportunity to figure out a longer-term solution for them. I think that we are dealing with a very difficult, complicated situation in that part of the Northern Triangle. The people who are coming from that area to this country are coming for the same reasons my ancestors came. I cannot, in good faith, see them in any way different from the people who I value in my own family. So I urge you to support this.
Thank you, Joanna. Francois Haight.
Francoise Att, and I'm from 63 Washington Street, and I'm here about the Wiley-Russell Dam. I would like to voice my opinion that we should not repair it. I sent you all an email yesterday, so I'm not going to waste your time repeating all of it, but just know that I think it is absurd to spend money on a structure that is not serving any useful, that is not useful at this time, and that's not protecting the population. I'm the director of the Water Resources Research Center at UMass, and I want to tell you that we would never recommend repairing such a dam. On the contrary, we would support what the partners are proposing, which is to remove it.
Thank you. Sarah Piltzer.
Good evening, Sarah Pilzer, 31 Madison Circle, Greenfield. Recently, not a day has gone by that I've not felt saddened by the way we are treating immigrants in this country, nor scared about what could happen next. I also feel helpless to do anything about that. But I'm here tonight to talk to you because the best way that I know to combat those fears and the sadness is through love and compassion, and that's what I see in the Safe Cities Ordinance. So I am here to speak up, to fight my own fears, and ask you to support this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Gordon.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Gordon. I live at 10 Eastern Avenue in Greenfield. I'm here to voice my strong support for the proposed Safe City Ordinance and to thank Councilor Renaud and the council for bringing up this proposal again. We've been here before. 2 years ago, we spent weeks debating this proposal, and we spent hours and hours at the final council meeting listening to thoughtful and emotional public comments that were overwhelmingly in support of passing this ordinance. And yet the majority of the council at that time chose to not listen to the majority of the public, and the ordinance failed. The only thing that has changed, other than the makeup of the council in those 2 years, is that the Trump administration has gone out of its way to prove itself somehow even more racist and homicidally dangerous for immigrants, refugees, and minorities in general than many of us feared. The argument I made to this council 2 years ago is that no one is safe in a town where some people don't feel that they can safely call the police if they experience a crime or contact city officials for any reason. If we don't pass this ordinance, then undocumented people and other immigrants cannot safely make that call. If we are a safe city, they can, and this enhances their safety and all of ours. That practical argument still stands, but there is a moral argument that I believe is now even more important. Cities, towns, institutions, corporations, and individuals across this country must stand up and be extremely clear with this administration that we will not use our resources to participate in a system that is terrorizing and destroying children and families and literally murdering people in our name with our tax dollars. As a community, we must take a stand that we will not be complicit. We can do that here tonight. Please pass this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie DeClose.
Stephanie Duclos, 166 Chapman Street. I am asking for a referendum to be brought to the voters on the Safe City Ordinance. I do not believe that it is completely representative of this town, of the people sitting here who are speaking for the safe city. I think that the public isn't quite educated as far as what we are at risk at losing to be designated a safe city. The DOJ provides many grants, federal grants, funded grants, that this administration has said he is willing to pull from agencies such as the Opioid Task Force, from NELQUIT, from other very humanly supported groups. Are we willing as a town to put our neck out on the line to jeopardize that funding that essentially helps our police departments, that helps our corrections facilities, that helps women that are victims here within the United States of domestic violence? If I were a criminal, I would not be calling the police to report a crime. I would be in fear as well. I am not talking about being compassionate. I believe that we should continue to allow the churches to have refugees and asylum seekers. But last I knew, there was a separation of church and state. If we pass a law that jeopardizes funding that helps our citizens in support of passing a law within this town that's not directly supported our citizens, I'm not saying that everybody shouldn't be fairly treated. I'm not saying it's not a human plight. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Mosier.
Street, Greenfield. start off by saying that I fully support Pastor Lewandowski no matter what day it is, whether we're discussing that today or not. I stand with him, and if you stand for safe cities or sanctuary cities and you still support abortion, then you're a hypocrite. That said, I question the legitimacy of this vote tonight because of something that was said during the Appointments and Ordinance Committee. That is, we're voting on that next week, and that was prior to public comment. So I believe this is a predetermined vote. I don't know if open meeting law has been violated, but there it is. For speaking my mind last week, in one particular social media thread, I was called a bigot, a lunatic, a cowardly dip expletive, and I'm scary. So I'm a scary coward. Okay, you figure that one out. For the record, it's seditious, not cetaceous. Okay, S-E-D-I-T-I-O-U-S. I asked if they have to register for selective service. There's a difference between an immigrant, by the way, and an illegal immigrant. Title 8, U.S. Code. Okay, do they register for selective service, like my son has to, or your son has to? Because if they don't, that's not fair. What you're looking at here tonight is an episode of government trying to impose socialism. You're trying to give people what I have as a right. I'm an 18-year honorably discharged Army veteran, and I earned that right either by birth, okay, and yep, somebody said that, or by citizenship. I've spoken with people who are naturalized, and they're ticked about this. I suggest you go around to their communities and talk to them. But do illegal immigrants or do immigrants who are not citizens serve in the U.S. Armed Forces? Yes, they do. Do they get out of the U.S. Armed Forces? No, because when they get out, they're citizens. That is a pathway to citizenship. I have nothing against immigrants. Yes, we are all immigrants. We all used to be citizens of Pangea.
It's been 2 minutes.
In my country, we get to speak all the time.
Thank you. Doug Wright?
Good evening. Douglas Sky White, 237 Conway Street, probably dark side of the moon. So I'm here to encourage the council. By the way, thank you for the good, excellent jobs that you guys do under a lot of duress. Appreciate that. I'd like to encourage you to pass this Greenfield Safe City Ordinance, but I do have one concern. There are an awful lot of homeless people in this town. I've got several of them living in my house because I feel committed to helping the homeless. So I'm just wondering, are we looking at the availability of services to take care of people in need that are coming in as immigrants, as opposed to a whole bunch of homeless people that we have already? So I think that's a genuine concern of balancing. You know, this isn't 1718 or 1900 where you just open your doors and say, everybody come on in, you know. And I'm an immigrant. My grandmother came from Bergen, Norway to Ellis Island. So I just want to raise that concern because I think it's legitimate and I think it's valid and I think it's important. We want to make sure that we do a good job in servicing the homeless people that are already here, as well as helping make this a safe city for immigrants coming in. So thank you for your concern and consideration, and have a good night.
Thank you, Douglas. Betsy Colson. Betsy? Oh.
Hi, I'm Betsy Colson. I live on 163 Davis Street. This is the first time ever coming to a meeting, and the reason I came is because I don't think that this many people in this room right now should determine whether we make this a safe sanctuary town. There's not enough people here to put their vote in. There's thousands of people in Greenfield. A lot of them might be at work. I think it's a question that should be put on the ballot. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you. David Lewis?
My name is David Lewis. I live at 54 High Street in Greenfield. I'm against this ordinance of Safe City. I am a descendant of immigrants that came to the colonies, not even the colonies, in 1634. I had an ancestor that fought in the American Revolution at Bunker Hill. For years, because of their jobs, my family didn't serve in the military. I went in the military. I met people that came into the military that were not American citizens. They crossed over from Canada to join our military because of what we had, and they went for citizenship. The right way to do it is to come into the country the proper way and try to get citizenship. I think this whole matter should be put on the ballot. I don't think that this board speaks for the majority of the people of this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Groscup?
Ben Groscup, 195 Chapman Street. I strongly support the Safe City Ordinance. It raises an important question of how municipalities should relate to the federal government. And for many decades, the federal government has been waging an ever-escalating war against immigrants, particularly from Central America. First, by making violent coups in their home countries, and second, by maximizing the suffering that they have to endure on their journey. This ordinance is a modest but important effort to push back against this war. Let's look at the history. Under Bill Clinton, the immigration discussion turned to criminalization. Funding went up for fences, and we had a real detention system growing in this country. George W. Bush made the conversation be about terrorism, immigrants as terrorists, and we saw that infrastructure of sensors along the border and walls increasing. That was also when ICE was created, was under the George W. Bush. And then Barack Obama was talking about targeting the bad apples, the bad immigrants, so-called, and leaving the good, so-called good immigrants alone. But under his administration, 2 million immigrants were deported by this country, 2 million human beings sent to very dangerous situations. The federal government has created an infrastructure for punishing and brutalizing immigrants, and today the Trump administration is using that infrastructure, which it inherited, to enact its sick fantasy of a white supremacist nation. This must be resisted. There is a violent and ugly form of lawlessness in this country, and it is the federal government's inability to protect basic human rights in the immigration system as stipulated by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is an important step in the right direction to support human rights and to say, as a community, we stand with immigrants. Thank you.
Sonia lit up.
Sonia Lindo, 22 Haywood Street in Greenfield. I'm sorry if you hear me nervous. It's the first time I present in a public hearing like this. I was born in Peru. I live in Greenfield for 25 years. I know many of you know me. I have seen you many times too. I have 2 kids. They were born here in Greenfield. This is our home. This is where they were born. This is they were born in the hospital here in Greenfield. We go to the YMCA. We went to the family center. They study here in Greenfield. This is our home. I am here to ask you to please find it in your heart to support this ordinance. This is more than just a legal or illegal immigrant situation. This talks about who we are as a community. My experience as a Peruvian living here in Greenfield has not been couldn't be more positive. Since I've moved here, I found people who has told me how wonderful it is that I can teach Spanish to my kids, have been incredibly supportive. incredibly supportive. That's the Greenfield I have experienced in these years. The skin, the color of my skin doesn't define who we are. If you're white, if you're brown, it doesn't make you a good or a bad person. Greenfield has deep problems: poverty, drugs, crime. Why are we talking about feeling fearful for those who are vulnerable? We need to stand as leaders of our community. I beg you, please stand for and show your vision of what Greenfield as a community is. It's a community that is respectful. It's a community that builds to the future. It's not a community that accepts division like this. As a brown person, if I walk in the streets, let me finish that sentence, please.
Finish your sentence.
Walking in the streets and seeing people like the gentleman who just presented is scary. And an ordinance like this ensures us, who are somehow different, that we can walk in the streets of Greenfield in a safe way. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Newman?
Good evening. I'm Bill Newman. I am the director of the Western Massachusetts office of the American Civil Liberties Union, which is in Northampton. I want to bring to your attention, as I speak in favor of the Safe City Ordinance and to urge you to pass the Safe City Ordinance this evening, two constitutional principles. One from the Massachusetts Constitution, the first article of the first part of the Massachusetts Constitution, which sets forth this equality principle. Quote, all people are born free and equal. And I would urge that equal means an equal right to call the police if you've been the victim of rape or the victim of domestic violence or the victim of sexual trafficking. You should be able to call the police and not fear that that will result in your deportation or the deportation of some family member or friends. You should be able to offer your testimony equally without fear that you're going to be deported. You should be able to access the political and social contract that the city makes with its residents to be available to all people, because our Constitution says all people are born free and equal and have certain natural, essential, and unalienable rights. And among those rights are the right of seeking safety and happiness. The first part of the Constitution of the Constitution of the Commonwealth. It is breathing life. It is putting vitality. It is putting our energy and our ethos and righteousness into the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's what this ordinance does. The last sentence of that paragraph, quote, equality under the law shall not be denied or abridged because of sex, race, color, creed, or national origin. This Safe City Ordinance says we will not discriminate. We will not discriminate because of national origin. And I urge you to vote yes for equality. Thank you.
Thank you. Grace Roundtree?
Hi, my name is Grace Roundtree. I'm with the Resistance Center for Peace and Justice and the Immigrant Protection Project of the ACLU Massachusetts, and I'll be presenting a letter written by members and officials in surrounding communities to the Greenfield City Council and to Greenfield residents regarding the Safe Cities Ordinance. We want to extend our appreciation to the people of Greenfield who support the adoption of the Safe Cities Ordinance. The ordinance will help ensure that the civil rights of all residents in the community are protected and that individuals are not discriminated against based on what they look like or where they come from. The passage of this ordinance will strengthen your community's commitment to keeping families together, enhance public safety, and support the rights of workers. We proudly represent and reside in communities that have passed similar measures and can attest to the importance, particularly in times of division, of restating and codifying our support for all people. None of us have witnessed any negative consequences within our cities and towns from the adoption of this type of legislation. At this moment in history, small gestures of our shared humanity, even within the confines of city council meetings, reverberate across the state the country, and the world. We look forward to Greenfield joining the ranks of communities that codify their commitment to protecting their residents. Yours in friendship and support, Joe Comerford, State Senator, Hampshire, Franklin, and Worcester, Alex B. Morse, Mayor, Holyoke, Massachusetts, Jesse Liederman, Springfield City Councilor, Adam Gomez, Springfield City Councilor, Margaret A. Conniff, East Hampton City Councilor, Omar Gomez, East Hampton City Councilor, Nelson Shiflett, Petitioner, Conway Safe Community Bylaw, Russ Vernon Jones, Petitioner, Amherst Community Bylaw, Elisa Klein, Northampton City Councilor, Paul Mark, State Representative, 2nd Berkshire District.
Thank you. Jeff Napolitano.
Hi, I'm here as a member of the Resistance Center for Peace and Justice, but I've been asked by apparently a local celebrity to read a statement on his behalf, Monty Belmonte. I can't read the entire thing because it's pretty long, but I'll give you the full version afterwards, but let me take a stab at this. It is with deep regret that I can't be there in person with you tonight to support this Safe City Ordinance. Despite the historic rivalries between Greenfield and my town of Montague, I must admit, as Greenfield goes, so goes the county. Greenfield becoming a safe city will make all of our neighbors from Greenfield, Montague, and beyond that much safer. As the grandchild of immigrants living in a town built by the hands of immigrants, where the churches have names that are virtually impossible to pronounce to non-native speakers of those languages, such as Our Lady, I actually don't know how to pronounce that. It is undeniable that the positive impact immigrants have had in this valley over the last century. That positive impact continues today. The country the people are coming from may have changed, but the impact is the same. The number of immigrants whom I've been lucky enough to get to know have added such richness to my family's life. From our neighbors down the street from China whose children play with my children and who travel to Greenfield to work, to the amazing people making tamales at the Greenfield Farmers Market, to the wonderful man from Moldova who helped my wife fix our broken trunk, immigrants are making my family's life in Franklin County better every day. Immigrants get the job done. I have no idea on the immigration status of any of these people who have made my life better, and it is none of my business, just as it is none of the business of any local official. This Safe City Ordinance will help us all mind our own businesses, to see people solely as people, and to make all of the people in Greenfield and beyond safer. I urge the council to unanimously pass this ordinance. Monty Belmonte.
Perfect. Timing-wise. Ken Sparkle.
Good evening. My name is Ken Sprank. I'm the project leader for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's Connecticut River Fish and Wildlife Conservation Office. It's in Sunderland. I'm speaking in support of Alex and Andy's proposal for removal of the Wiley-Russell Dam. The Fish and Wildlife Service supports long-term river restoration, including dam removal, for biological, ecological, water quality, and recreational benefits. There are over 3,000 dams in the Connecticut River Basin that have negatively impacted the health of this river basin. The service has been involved in numerous dam removals with many other experienced state, federal, and NGO partners for over 20 years now, including Andy. And we support the plan to remove this dam. Most recently, our Fish and Wildlife Service efforts have expanded to include an objective to reduce government infrastructure costs with dams that simply serve no functional purpose to society any longer, having outlived their intended purpose. So many are becoming burdensome cost for government entities, as you're experiencing with this particular dam, with ongoing risks and significant real dollar costs to the public. And I hope you'll fully consider Alex and Andy's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Lydia Wood.
Madam President, it is now about 8:19. We have 14 items on the agenda tonight. It appears that we're pretty well into out-of-town comment and have had a fairly representative sampling of that. I inquired if there was much more, or if we were going to set a time limit on out-of-town comment. At some point, I'll need to leave for the evening, and I'd like to be able to act on the motions before us.
Council Master, we're almost through the list, so we'll get there. Lydia Wood.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Lydia Wood. I live at 29 River Road in South Deerfield. I'm an organizer with the Western Mass Area Labor Federation, a coalition of local unions representing more than 20,000 workers. We're dedicated to building the power of working people to fight for a better world for all. I'm here today to stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity with our immigrant brothers and sisters, our coworkers and friends. As working people, we stand against the way detentions and deportation are used to instill fear in communities, tear apart families, and drive immigrant workers underground. We urge you all to do the same. Immigrants and refugees are valuable members of our community and unions and deserve to have their human rights, safety, and dignity respected. Immigrants are our neighbors, our colleagues, our workers, our caregivers. Their contributions have always played a vital role in building our country, our economy, and our labor movement. We at the Western Mass Area Labor Federation recognize that immigrant raids are often used as tactics to scare and silence workers who would otherwise stand up for their rights on the job and in their community. They are inherently anti-worker. When we allow our communities to be divided by bigotry and hatred, we erode our collective power and lose sight of the real threat to our democracy and economy. Corporate greed, the power of the 1%, and policies that put profit over people. We stand with the 400,000 members of the Massachusetts AFL-CIO and the 12.5 million working people in the national AFL-CIO in fighting for the rights and dignity of all workers, including our immigrant brothers and sisters. We hope you will join us. Thank you.
Rose Bookbinder.
Hello, good evening. Rose Bookbinder, 20 Hampton Ave, Suite 200 in Northampton. I first want to remark that we stand today on land stolen from the indigenous Pocumtuck Nation and the Wabanaki Confederacy, and no one can truly be illegal on stolen land. I am an organizer with the Pioneer Valley Worker Center and Jobs with Justice, but I'm here to speak as the executive board member of the Hampshire-Franklin Central Labor Council, which is a local chapter of the AFL-CIO representing 8,000 union members here in Franklin and Hampshire County. I'm here to urge your support for the Safe City Ordinance. Springfield, Holyoke, East Hampton, Northampton, and Amherst have already passed these ordinances. Workers and families move up and down our valley for work, and we must ensure that these workers can travel up and down our valley safely. Thank you in advance, hopefully, for helping to create a safe corridor for our workers. And I'm reading a statement from the AFL. This escalating attack on immigrant and refugee families in our country is an affront to labor's values and a clear threat to the freedoms we all hold dear. Family is the reason we go to work every day. America's unions categorically reject policies that tear families apart. Instead of welcoming refugees and asylum seekers, we see those fleeing violence cast back into harm's way, shamefully imprisoned for profit and torn from their children no matter what age. These policies harm and offend all working families. The AFL-CIO opposes immigration enforcement tactics that breed fear and chill the exercise of our basic rights. We demand government agencies that serve the greater good and are accountable both to their workforces and the public. We reject any limits on due process for the vulnerable populations. We can and we must do better. We will prevail by rejecting the politics of division and building a strong, inclusive, and democratic movement for justice for all working families.
Thank you. Hodales Bararas. There we go.
Hi, good evening. My name is Odalis Borrayes, and I'm daughter of immigrants. And I'm going to talk about how being without a parent is hard because I had experienced how my mom was deported and how being without her has made me and has caused my sister a trauma, and how we have to work and gain $50 a day. So, and also I have, not just me, but also my community has experienced how be detained as for a police or something has changed your life. My friend and coworker Eduardo Samaniego was deported months ago, and that's when I feel when my heart got crushed. And every time I saw people from my community, because I live in Springfield, and maybe you will think like, what's this girl doing here? But actually, I worked here years ago. And I remember the time when I saw a police officer detain one of the people who are driving and ask for his license, and then detain him and say, you don't have a license, so get out of the car. And every time I think about it, I think about Aníbal Gomez, one of them who was detained also in Holyoke and was put in a detention here in Greenfield. And I remember the day when everyone was like, oh, do you know Aníbal Gomez? He was detained, and everyone was like, what? Like, why him? We never know when it's gonna be our time. And also, I'll talk for my uncle who was detained also here. It was almost to be deported to Mexico. And every time people call us criminals, they call illegally, but they don't know that being illegally is not because we want to be illegally. The thing is that the system has caused us to immigrate to this country. Even if I was born here, but I know I have been living in Guatemala for 13 years.
Oh,
I moved there. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'll just finish this.
Sure.
Well, I was born here and I moved to Guatemala, and I speak more fluently Spanish than English, and that's my barrier, because now I'm learning, and I see when my mom was deported, I see how work in the farms has caused you abuses from your own bosses. So think about it, and if you want to vote yes, it's your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Eliza Klein.
Good evening, City Councilors. My name is Elisa Klein. I live at 18 Chestnut Avenue in Northampton, and I'm a City Councilor in Northampton. I was one of the original co-sponsors of a similar piece of legislation, and I can testify to the fact that it has not had negative consequence in Northampton. It's a little way in which we at the municipal, local level can push back against what is being called immigration policy in this country. I would say, though, that this is not in fact policy. It is more violent and dehumanizing nativism that is being forwarded from the federal level. It's racist, it's fascist, and it's terrorism, and we need to figure out ways that we at the local level can respond. And I wonder if you think, listening, that I'm overstating things here. I'd like you to think about the separation of babies and toddlers from their parents, put into prisons in deplorable conditions, the breaking up of families through that have temporary protected status, TPS, the deportation of young Americans with DACA status, deferred action for childhood arrivals. Did you know that HUD, for instance, is currently evicting over 100,000 families in the United States that have mixed status of immigrants and non-immigrants? So these are the kinds of things that are being pushed down to us at the local level from the feds, and we need to figure out how to push back. As your colleague on a neighboring city's city council, I implore you to use the local municipal power that you have to push back against these atrocities and injustices. We can talk about parking and all kinds of other semi-mundane things at the municipal level, but this is your one opportunity. This is a very important opportunity to really take a stand around the things that are very important to all of the people in your city, in your town. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker of the evening will be Harris Freeman.
I was going to speak in favor. I'm a Northampton resident, and I've worked on these ordinances. I pass.
Okay. It has been an hour and a half, so we're going to skip the lightning round, and we've gone through the list of everybody who has signed up. So with that, I'm going to close the public comment, and Councilor Wheeler, could you please read the public hearing and second reading? Before you do that, though, I want to just, again, because we have the advantage of having the agendas in front of us, what most of you are here for is early in the agenda. I assume it's the Safe City, and I know there's some here for the Wiley-Russell Dam as well. The Safe City is number 2. I'm sorry, the Wiley-Russell Dam isn't anywhere close. Maybe we'll change the rules of procedure and we can get that up closer if somebody makes that motion. But for now, we're going to go on to the public hearing and second reading. Councilor Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam President. Public hearing in accordance with Home Rule Charter. The Greenfield City Council will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, July 17th, 2019 at 7 p.m. at John Zon Community Center, 35 Pleasant Street, to receive public input on the following. Appropriate $460,000 to replace Green River School's heating system. The City Council will consider the same on Wednesday, July 17th, 2019 at 7 p.m. at John Zon Community Center, 35 Pleasant Street. Materials can be obtained from the City Clerk's office, 14 Court Square, from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, or by phone, 413-772-1555, extension 6163. Karen Reno, Greenfield City Council President. City Council second reading. Do I do that now? I do that now. Second reading, July 15, 2019. Appropriate $460,000 to replace Green River School's heating system.
Thank you. So I'm going to open up the public hearing at 8:30. And does anybody want to speak to the money to replace the Green River School's heating system? Okay, I'm going to keep the public hearing open for that. Moving on to motion orders and resolutions. Councilor Gilmore.
Thank you. The City Council move that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council amend the City Council Rules of Procedure as follows. Subsection 565, Rule 11, Parliamentary Procedure, to add paragraph, at the request of the Council President, a parliamentarian may be asked to participate in the Town Council meetings.
Is there a second? Okay. And report from committee?
I don't remember. I remember it was positive. I don't remember if it was unanimous or not.
Okay. I have one question. Is Will Roberts in the audience? Okay, councilors, I think I had a communication breakdown with Will Roberts, and that was my fault. So I thought the report from committee was that this was tabled, and because Will Roberts, who is the person, I was the one who requested this, he is the person I want to be the parliamentarian. Because he isn't here, I would be fine if somebody made a motion to table this tonight. All in favor? Opposed, abstained, motion carries. So this is tabled. Councilor Gilmore.
Let's see.
And just to be clear, I was that communication breakdown, not Will. It's on me.
The City Council move that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council amends the Code of the City of Greenfield by adding Chapter 353, establish the City of Greenfield as a safe city ordinance is attached hereto, and further amends the table of contents and index of contents of the code, and further that no non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that be in compliance with the numbering format of the Code of the City of Greenfield.
Is there a second?
Second. And this
Okay.
one was 3 in favor, 1 abstention, and 1 opposed.
Okay.
I can't even hear you.
I think it needs to be raised. It's Mike 1.
So this was 3 in favor, 1 abstention, and 1 opposed.
That's so much better. And councilors, I'm just going to remind you, I'm definitely going to invoke Rule 5 of our Rules of Procedure, which is that there's going to be a limit, a 5-minute limit to every single counselor. We're going to time you, and no counselor can speak more than twice on the same motion. So with that said, let's start discussion.
Madam President, could you inquire of the committee chairperson whether or not there were recommendations for amendments and what the recommendation of those amendments were?
If the committee chairperson, do you want to talk about the amendments which would have to be made on the floor here again?
Right, so one of the amendments was, when we're talking about inquiring legal status, it would be unless otherwise required by law, and we were talking about issues of voter registration, or other areas where you are required to be a U.S. citizen to participate. And then we went through 8 U.S.C. Section 1373, and that's where Harris Freeman came in and was able to explain to us that that is how this is legal under United States law, because this is just us not complying with requests that are not mandatory. I'm sorry, what other amendments did you want me to discuss?
Section B.
Yes, the
Councilors,
section B and
actually,
not-
I'd rather, if there's going to be an amendment, I'd rather an amendment just get made, and then the reason for the amendment can just get made on the floor of the council. That would be my preference. Are we having, you both have to share a mic? It's, okay. Yeah, if I don't know if there's any way to get a mic. That seems like some of the audio is going in and out, and I've heard that was a big problem last time. So let's start the discussion. Oh, thank you. Yes, Councilor Mass.
Madam President, I believe the recommendations were unanimous to pass these two amendments, and I'd make the amendments, but ask that consideration be given against my time in doing so. I move to amend under maintaining a safe city, paragraph B, by striking the words "or discriminate" and substituting the words "in a discriminatory manner."
Thank you. Is there a second? Did I hear a second? Amendment to the motion's been made and seconded. Councilor Mass?
Primarily, this was designed to ensure that the town could still take non-discriminatory actions related to these institutions, public health and otherwise, that we might need to be able to take.
Is there any other discussion? Councilor Gilmore?
So I don't want to draw the meeting out any longer than it has to be, except that amendment just feels it already says that. So I feel like by changing the words around, we're just splitting hairs.
Is there anybody who hasn't spoken on the amendment? Councilor Mass?
To be clear, that's not what it says. The language says, "The city official shall not target with legal action or discriminate against a medical, educational, or faith institution in their mission of providing refuge to immigrants and their families." It says they shall not take legal action. It doesn't say they shouldn't take legal action in a discriminatory manner. It says they shall not discriminate and they shall not take legal action. They're two separate things. So, for example, a faith institution which was housing refugees in a way that was contrary to the public health, somewhat similar to the situation we had with a tent city on Town Common, we could not take any legal action to enforce our health laws. It actually would be discriminatory to not make this change because we would be enforcing against some groups and their missions and other groups not in their missions, I think it might endure us a legal challenge. And I would ask that if councilors feel it doesn't make much of a difference, I would ask that we make it and avoid a litigation down the road.
Anybody else care to comment on the amendment to the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Could you please raise your hand? Opposed? The amendment fails. Sorry, abstention. Still fails. More discussion. Councilor Mass.
The second amendment was in paragraph C to add after the word status, except as required by state or federal law. That was also a unanimous positive recommendation of committee. I'd make that motion.
Second.
Amendment to the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Councilor Wheeler?
It's paragraph C, after the words immigration status, and you'd add comma, except as required by state or federal law, and then the period.
C after maintaining it. There are two Cs.
Yeah, maintaining safe city. The numbering is needs to be corrected.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, so this is for the amendment. All in favor? Could you raise your hands, please? Opposed? Abstain? The amendment to the motion fails. So now we're on to the main body of the motion. Is there discussion on the main body of the motion? Councilor Dolan.
So I came into office just a few months after the initial Safe City vote, and on my campaign flyer in bold print, I advertised my support for the Safe City concept and for making Greenfield a safe city. So I feel by voting yes tonight, I'm just fulfilling a promise that I made to voters. My only complaint about this ordinance, as was mentioned by several folks during public comment, is that it actually doesn't go far enough. I think we would all be safer in a community, for instance, where undocumented immigrants were able to get driver's licenses and auto insurance. And I also ultimately think that we should focus on abolishing immigration and customs enforcement.
Other discussion? Councilor Pyfrom.
I have a question for Chief Haig, if he's available.
Is Chief Haig here? Chief, could you join us for a second? It's okay.
Now do a handstand.
Thank you for coming.
Councilor Pyfrom has some questions for you.
I just have a couple of quick questions.
I'll try to give you an answer.
I was reading some of the, no, I'm not going to eat the microphone, sorry, Pen. Let's see. So, yeah, I was reading some of the maintaining a safe city, and I had some of the questions on a couple of the letters. Right now, do we have any city officials inquiring about immigration?
City officials?
Yeah,
Not to me.
Not to you. For any reason, none come about, none surfaced? And have we ever, to your knowledge, just to question immigration on anybody?
We don't ask an immigration status at all, no.
Have we ever targeted anybody or discriminated anybody of, for any reason related to immigration?
I certainly hope not.
Okay. I'm just pulling some questions from this ordinance, or this, do officials initiate an investigation on immigration status alone? Is there for any reason that?
For immigration, absolutely not, no. I mean, we don't have a policy that we don't.
Okay.
We don't ask. It's not part of our daily routine. It's not part of our booking. It's not part of our traffic stops. It's not a concern to us.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Councilor Ellis.
Oh, sorry.
Since Chief Hague is here, I'd ask a couple questions as well. When we first looked at the Safe Cities ordinance 2 years ago, I sent you an email with, I think it was 3 or 4 questions. And yeah, I'm not going to ask you to reference them. I just, your answers today were the same answers that were in that email to me, so in the last 2 years, the answers have not changed, which was we don't ask. I believe in that email you stated that the system doesn't even have an option to put in whether someone's illegal or not. There's not even a flag or anything in there, so they wouldn't even be able to do that if you wanted to.
Not our system, no.
Yeah. So I asked some of the same questions that you had, Councilor Pyfrom, in that we are not taking the actions that we have in our Safe Cities proposed bylaw and in some of the handouts that we received. We're not doing the things that would make us an unsafe city. I believe we are one of the safest cities. In this respect, we have, those were all my questions for you, sorry, and now I'm just going to debate. So I believe that this actually may have unintended consequences where it would give people a false sense of security, because what needs to happen is if ICE is coming, they're coming. There's no, Greenfield is not going to stop ICE from doing things that ICE does. Yes, we will. And
Please, no comments from the audience.
thank you, Madam President. And I believe that the only way that this issue is going to be fixed is at the federal level, and we have to do it at the federal level. And to pass this, we're not going to stop anything that the feds may do with this ordinance. This situation is very close to my family personally. I have a immediate family member who is undocumented. This person would rather, because I've spoken with my family, would rather that it stay under the radar than to put a spotlight on it, because they feel that they would then be targeted in a city that makes the declaration of being a safe or sanctuary city. And that's, to me, important, is to hear what an immediate family member of mine has to say. And I believe that it would be a false sense of security if we do this. Greenfield is a very wonderful city. I believe that. I've been here all my life. My friends have been friends of all persuasions, all colors. Those things don't register in my mind when I pick who I am friends with. I don't care what someone is, as long as they treat me the way that they'd like to be treated, and I treat them the way that I would like to be treated. So I believe that this ordinance is not a good idea for those reasons. Thank you, President.
Thank you. Chief Hague, I don't think you have to stand. You can go back. Yeah.
Thank you.
I will be there. Thank you. And I do want to reiterate to the audience that, first, I wanted to thank everybody. Everybody who spoke, whether we all have different opinions, but we all live in this community together. Everyone was really good with keeping with the time, and I so appreciate that. And I know the other counselors do as well. And also, please, when a counselor is speaking, do not heckle, do not boo, don't contradict. And just as we sat quietly while everybody else spoke, it just makes the meeting move along more quickly and lets us all leave here with a feeling of being respected by one another, no matter what we believe. Councilor Stemple?
I was just going to say, I think Chief Hague would have liked the front seat. I don't know. My microphone happens to be really loud, and I'm already loud to begin with, so I'll back it up. I have felt extremely helpless watching what's going on at our southern border to make a change or make a difference on what's going on down there. And I was really excited when this came back on our agenda because, alas, here's one way, albeit very small, that I can take a stand as someone who pledged to uphold the Constitution as a city councilor of the city of Greenfield, to respond at the local level and to speak truth to my values and the values of my family and my heritage of Polish immigrants. It's Our Lady of Czeslachowa. And I just wanted to speak to the fact of laying under the radar and not making change because it's our practice already. Change doesn't happen if you don't do anything. If people did nothing, I wouldn't be able to vote, let alone serve on this city council. If you don't have to fight for your rights, or if you've never had to fight for your rights because of who you are, what you were born as, what gender you are, and of what origin you are, then you don't know the importance of why you have to do something. And so I'm really excited to support this ordinance tonight, and to also say, it was alleged that none of us actually have read the Constitution, and that's not true. Being undocumented is not a crime. Undocumented immigrants have rights under the U.S. Constitution. Holding an immigrant past the point when they should be released just so ICE can pick them up is unconstitutional. And immigrants can sue the police for unlawful holding. They have rights, and it is constitutional. So actually what we're passing tonight is upholding the Constitution ordinance. And we have a great police force, a great police chief, and a great civil service unit here. And so while this might seem not needed, we can take a stand at the local level and show what our values are and support humanity, not whether you are American or whether you are Guatemalan, or because if we're not standing together, then we're not standing at all. Yes, thank you.
Councilor Mayo? Councilor Mayo, we need a microphone on you.
Thank you. First off, I want to say that I'm wholeheartedly endorsing the Safe City Ordinance, and I'm happy to put my yes to the vote. We're dealing with extreme hazardous conditions from our southern border, and that it's a crisis, and that we as human beings need to step up to the plate and deal with this situation. And I'm not sure if other people remember, Tip O'Neill said that all politics is local. And this is something that we can do on the local level. And we all know how beloved Tip O'Neill was and what he was able to do despite Ronald Reagan. And I urge that we take his words to heed and act locally. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Burson.
This isn't simply a ordinance. This is a declaration of humanity. and understand it in those terms. There are people in this country who are trying to come into this country are dying. Never mind children being imprisoned. As the grandson of relatives who are fried in ovens in Europe, I understand it in a very visceral way. So we may talk about the legalities of this or that, and it almost tickles me that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and many other states in the United States of America have adopted the legalization of marijuana. Ever heard about the legalization of marijuana? Well, guess what? It's a federal crime. Marijuana is a drug that the federal government has declared to be illegal. Doesn't seem to bother the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in connection with that particular lawless federal act. So what we are doing here is very, very important because it is a statement at this level that we, the people, don't like what you, the federal government, are doing. And although we can't throw our bodies on the borders of Texas or Arizona or New Mexico, at least we can make this small statement that we as a community of individuals are standing and screaming at you with a relatively small voice that we are not going to tolerate this kind of injustice, this kind of inhumanity, and frankly, this kind of silent murder. So I support this Safe Cities ordinance, not for what it will do, but what it represents. And this Safe City ordinance, I think, represents the best, the very best, that this community can offer to the state and to the country. And I want to stand with everyone else, not only in Western Massachusetts, but around the country, who believe that what is going on is really systematic genocide, and nothing short of systematic genocide to thousands of people. And you don't have to visualize the father with the daughter dead on a beach. You can see it in many other places. So this is going to be, if passed, and I urge my councilors, who I have the greatest respect for, that this ought to be a unanimous vote and a declaration by the city of Greenfield that we are not going to be silent, which is in many ways the greatest detriment to liberty at this time. So I support this.
Thank you, Councilor Burson. Councilor Mass, and then Vice President Ricketts. You'll be sharing a microphone, or maybe not.
Sorry. Did you want to go first?
I'll defer to you if you want to speak first.
Okay, I'm thinking back at a few things that I heard tonight, and one of those was that this wasn't a representative body. And I would have to say that I really do think it is. I know that there's lots of people who may work or they couldn't be here, but they did go to the polls, and that's how we got here. And so that's what representative is. I wouldn't be sitting here. When I became a counselor, which was something I thought about for years before I ran, and I heard I was the first African-American woman to be on council, it was like so proud and exciting. At the same time, it's like, really? That should have always been happening. And I understand the safe and how everyone feels so comfortable here, and I absolutely love Greenfield. But I remember when this community came out in a huge way, when all those racist emails came out about me. And that actually happened here in the city that I absolutely love. And I voted for Safe City 2 years ago, and I ran for office again. And I said, I know there are some people who didn't like that, so I know that I won't get elected again because of that, but I still did it because it's what I believed in. Well, I was the top vote getter. So I am your representative government, and I will be voting yes again, because if a community came out that much for me because of the type of emails that happened to me that affected my children and me, how am I going to turn my back on anyone else? And thank you all for coming.
Councilor Mass?
Thank you, Madam President. We are a generous country, and we're a generous community, and part of that means providing a generous social safety net to provide programs for poverty amelioration, as well as public works to our community as a whole, our libraries, our schools, our public safety. That all comes at a cost. And one thing we talk about in this community tremendously is sustainability. And I do not believe that we can maintain the welfare state that we have and a policy of open borders at the same time. A country must have borders. That's what makes it a country. And those borders are governed by the rule of law. Now, there are some people who believe that our rules of law are inadequate or inappropriate, and I agree with them. Those rules of law need to include adequate and fair provisions for asylum seekers, and our laws do in many ways. But they may not be adequate enough, and there are many revisions that need to be made to our immigration law, and I've been a long supporter of a comprehensive immigration reform strategy. But a comprehensive immigration reform strategy is one which also enforces whatever that reform is. You can't have a law and not enforce it. It is an unsustainable practice. Those people who attribute to the people who are opposed to the Safe City Ordinance racist or xenophobic tendencies, I assure you that while some may have those tendencies, the vast majority do not. They support the rule of law. I know a lot of people have talked about the crisis on our southern border, and I agree there is a crisis on our southern border that needs to be dealt with. But the vast majority of people who are undocumented in the United States are not undocumented from crossing the southern border. They're here from overstaying visas. And they're here from all countries all over the world, from Asia, from Europe, from Africa, and from Latin America. I would be fully in support of taking humanitarian aid, not only to the border, but to those countries that are affected. I think we make a tragic mistake of saying, okay, come here if you're in trouble, and we'll take care of you, but we're going to do nothing about the conditions in the places where you're running from. Shame on us. Ultimately, I believe that we should be cooperating our local, state, and federal authorities, and that's why I'm not in favor of this ordinance. We do take actions based on immigration here, or citizenship status here in Greenfield, and without the amendments, neither of which you passed, we're going to have some problems. We take regulatory actions. This ordinance says that a city official shall not city official shall not initiate or take law enforcement action, including regulatory actions, on the basis of actual or perceived immigration status. That was not amended. When you apply for veterans benefits in this town, that is a regulatory action, and it has to be taken according to federal law on the basis of citizenship status. The applications require that information to be collected. Now, because we can take no action, we are going to have trouble helping veterans apply for benefits. That letter was given to us by the veterans agent the last go-round. Notwithstanding the police chief's comments, they do ask questions about citizenship. Every time you apply for a firearms ID, the gun, your license to carry asks, are you a U.S. citizen? Denying someone their firearms license because they're not a U.S. citizen, which is required by state and federal law, is a regulatory action that now our police officers are not going to be able to do. They're going to have a problem. When you go into town hall and you ask to register to vote, there's a box on the form that says, are you a U.S. citizen? And if you don't check it, now the town clerk can't say, I need you to answer this question before I can process your application, because that is a regulatory action. I think that we
Councilor
really
Mass?
need to rethink this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Gilmore?
Do I have a good mic? Can people hear me? Okay.
We can hear you.
So I would like to remind my fellow councilors that this ordinance has passed in several cities across the Commonwealth. And in those cities, people are still able to apply for veterans benefits. They're still able to apply for a license for firearms. They're allowed to register their kids for school. They're allowed to do all of the things that we want people to be allowed to do. I understand that this is not supposed to be wrapped up in race, but I mean, if we face it, white people are not being pulled over and asked about their immigration status. I think that a lot of these issues are getting wrapped up in these dog whistles where we talk about rule of law. But all these people who are talking about rule of law, do they jaywalk? Do they bring fireworks into Massachusetts? Do they smoke marijuana like Councilor Burson was talking about? I really think that this is wrapped up in race, and I think that if we don't acknowledge that, we're denying the system of white supremacy that is allowing this stuff to happen at our border. And it's not just enough to say, oh, I'm not racist and I care about people. We have to actively work on stamping out racism at every chance. This means fixing it I know it needs to be fixed at the federal level. We can't do that. But what we can do is we can fix it in Greenfield. We need to do what's in our power, and that's what's in our power.
Councilor Sun, I'm just trying to figure out who's spoken and who hasn't spoken. Councilor Sun.
I like it what it says in Pledge of Allegiance, the flag, and several, we're all created equal. You know, we might not have the same ability all the time, but we're created equal. That means we're either male, female, or young kid or old kid. And I think we, no matter where we come from, there's only one person that I know and I care a whole lot about. He's my creator. And he, like was said earlier, he's the one that allowed all of us to be here. And I just feel that no matter where we are, how we go about it, we need to make everybody feel welcome. And that's whether it's going up Main Street or down, you know, wherever we are. because I don't know, only, I'm precinct 1 counselor, but represent the whole town. And I try to do the best I can. And this is one of the hardest jobs in Greenfield, to try to do what's best for everybody. And I think we need to try to work it out so that we can compromise one way or the other, so everybody's has the right to work at their legality in the town, in the country, or wherever. Because I have a lot of friends in Moldovians and Russians and Vietnamese and Thais and everything that through the years that I have come, they have come to the United States to work on citizenship. And I just feel that sometimes we have to not look at the top of the government, but start from the ground up like they did when we came to the United States in the first place. Because, like I said, we're all created equal, and the person I respect everybody that spoke tonight. And I just feel that we got to go with open minds and not, sometimes we need to step back and look at what it was like when our parents and grandparents came over. My dad's mom was Finnish. My mom's mom was Swedish. And they came over in the early 1900s because they wanted freedom of religion and everything else. And it's hard to make a yes or no on something like this. Because whether we say yes or no, we just got to understand that we're not, somebody says no, we're not to persecute them. We're all working for the town of Greenfield. And I just feel that we, as a city council, need to do what the best is for everybody and try to uphold everything. That's all I got to say.
Councilor Hirschfeld?
Yes, I'm looking at more at the big picture, what's happening in our country. I believe that our democracy is under attack, and this is one small way that we can fight back. Fellow towns and cities need to be working together to...
Yeah, just a little bit closer.
That's better? Good. I believe in looking at the big picture. Our democracy is under attack by our federal government. And if we don't fight back, we will lose it. So it's important that cities and towns get together and vote for a safe city. It's a small step, but it's a really large step that we can do together. And if we don't fight back, we will lose our democracy. It's being eroded every day on the federal level. And we have to fight back. I'm voting yes on this.
Councilor Wheeler?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you everyone for speaking. I'm going to try to hit 3 points. One is that this ordinance really, and immigration in general, has nothing to do with the so-called welfare state. It has nothing to do, well, it has something to do with being generous, but not in terms of the benefits that are provided. I think that there are studies that show that immigrants, documented or otherwise, are a productive part of our society that actually adds to the GDP of our cities. Earlier, Councilor Burson asked Superintendent Harper how the city was dealing with population decline, and she answered that we are not experiencing that. And I believe that part of that reason is that Greenfield has a healthy population of immigrants, and we do have immigrant children here that some of the rural regional school districts do not. My next point is that Vice President Ricketts brought up being the top vote getter, which I was so happy about. And many of us were elected on that day in November of 2017. And that morning, a van of farm workers was raided in Hatfield. So to people who say that it can't happen here, it can happen here. And it does happen here. We're a nation, you know, as we say, founded by immigrants. But is that true? Or are we a nation founded by migrants? By migrants fleeing religious persecution, migrating in pursuit of freedom and liberty and safety, the same things that people attempting to migrate from Guatemala or from Honduras or wherever they're trying to escape violence. You know, our Constitution was born out of revolution. Is that a legal act? Is there a government anywhere that has a procedure, a statute that shows how to go about committing revolution? I don't think there is. I think that the founders of this country knew that when the law becomes unjust, justice comes before the law. And so I think you have to do what's right. And so I vote yes. I vote yes on this.
Councilor Byford?
Yes, I just wanted to, remind some people that did speak earlier about listening to our constituents. We actually do. And a majority of the people that spoke in 2017 are not even here. They were from other towns speaking. So there's only a small group of people here from Greenfield that are speaking. Also, back in 2017, I had brought up that I'm the daughter of an immigrant who came here for asylum on visa, applied for his citizenship, and got it. Right now, Greenfield is a welcoming city. We welcome all citizens, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender identity, national origin, faith, age, income levels, sexual orientation, immigration status, and other protected status. Most of us living in Greenfield are making statements on a welcoming community that we already are. There's a legal process to follow for those obtaining asylum in the United States, and that's done through the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Back in the day, it took about probably 10 years to get a citizenship approved and honored. Nowadays, it's not quite 10 years. It's less than 10 years. But people are still following the legal process when they come into the country. As citizens living in Greenfield, upholding the law, we need to continue to abide by the laws, or there will be consequences, as we know. I suggest not to protest the laws. It causes divide in communities, and it also causes bad behaviors toward your neighbors and family members. So that's kind of a brainer right there. So in my opinion, Greenfield doesn't need to have a sanctuary safe city label. To me, it's just a red flag to put someone who is already safe and looking for safe place or passage in harm's way. We don't know the people that are in this town already, and why do we need to know that now? The ordinance will not stop ICE agents from raiding anybody. We don't have control over an ICE raid. We have control over what we're doing now as a city, making it safe for those that are already here instead of jeopardizing their safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Dolan?
Madam President, I move to call the question.
I haven't spoken yet.
Oh. I defer.
I am the author of the ordinance.
I defer.
Was that what you're going to speak on? You already spoke? Okay, so I'll speak and then we can call the question, because I did bring this ordinance forward. And I wanted to, I just want to give, by way of an example, I'm working, he's an intern with me, with a young, well, he's not that young, with a gentleman from Nigeria, and he's from not far from Chad. And he's a professional, and he's married and has children. He came here to get his master's degree, and then he's been assigned to me as an intern. Once the internship is up, the master's degree is over. And if he doesn't get a job as a registered nurse, he only has 1 year. And if within that 1 year nothing happens, he's going to be undocumented. And he's going to be sent right into harm's way, because if you just look up Chad in Nigeria right now on the internet, there's all kinds of warnings to not go there. It's extremely dangerous because there are terrorist cells operating in Chad. He has 2 children and a wife. He's hoping to bring them here. If this doesn't work out, he's going to look in Germany and he's going to look in Europe. Why shouldn't we create a place for him where he's safe? We're the lucky ones. We're here already. We don't have to worry about our families and our wives and husbands and children getting killed by terrorists. I mean, to a certain extent we do, but we have no idea what it is like to live in terror and fear every day. This is a man who's gone to school, who now has a master's degree, but it's not certain that he'll actually get a job here as a nurse, because there's certain barriers to that. And the fact that he's working for a union probably isn't going to help his chances that much. So we just hope and we pray that something happens and he gets a job. But if not, what this ordinance will do is that if he's in Greenfield, and yes, he's a black man, and if he gets pulled over, then he'll feel a little bit safer. Are we happy now that the police do not engage in asking people's status? Yes. But this ordinance goes beyond the police. It also extends to city officials. And just because this is a practice now, it's not codified in law. It doesn't mean that it always will be a practice. So it's time to take a stand against the horrible treatment against our fellow human beings around the globe. It's time to put this into law. And we're not going to continue to aid and abet a federal government that imprisons and separates children from their mothers and fathers on a daily basis. And it's time to take a stand against hate and start loving each other a little bit more. And I don't understand why that should be so hard. Now you can call the question. Councilor Dolan?
I call the question.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, so we're going to vote, and it'll be a roll call vote.
Councilor Sund?
Yes, could you please come back?
Councilor Burson?
Yes.
Councilor Alice?
No.
Councilor Pyfrom?
No.
Councilor Dolan?
Yes.
Councilor Gilmore?
Yes.
Councilor Wheeler?
Yes.
Councilor Mayo?
Proudly, yes.
Councilor Hirschfeld?
Yes.
Councilor Mass?
No.
Vice President Ricketts?
Yes.
Councilor Stemple?
Yes.
Councilor Sund?
Yes.
President Renault, would you like to vote?
Yes.
How would you?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Vice President Ricketts, could you please chair? I just have to go to the bathroom. And councilors, if you want the Wiley Russell Dam, somebody should make a motion to lift the rules of procedure. Also, I'm going to close the public hearing on the money for the Green River School at 9:25. Or do you want me to just take a break? Do you want to just take a break? Okay.
No, we got 11 things.
Well, are you taking a break?
Everybody's moving, yeah. It's okay.
How long? You should tell them how long.
All right, everybody, I can see people are moving. 5-minute break to suspend the rules of procedure so we could get to the Wiley Russell Dam so Alex isn't here all night.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, so we're gonna go right to the Wiley Russell Dam. So this was just so that we could skip around the agenda a little bit because I think that's the next thing that people are here for, unless I'm misreading the audience.
President, I have a question.
Yes.
I believe at appointments and ordinances, we tabled the police chief piece, so I don't believe we'll be voting on that tonight. I think we tabled it until we could have a discussion with the chief at the next appointment and ordinance. I just wanted to be clear about that part.
Okay, we'll come right back to that one, and then we'll do the dam, and then we'll go right back to the schedule as in the agenda. So Wiley Russell Dam, it is item number 11. Councilor Wheeler. On page 40.
Move that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council take from the table order number FY 19-121, the sum of $120,000 be appropriated for the repair design for the Wiley Russell Dam. To meet said appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is hereby authorized to borrow said sum of $120,000 pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, or any other enabling statute, and the mayor is hereby authorized to apply for, contract for, accept, and expend any federal and/or state grants or bond premiums available for the project to be used to reduce the appropriation, and further, the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary to carry out the intent and purpose of these projects, which was tabled at the May 22nd, 2019 City Council Annual Budget Meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so this is non-debatable, and clerk will call a roll. And this is to take the money for the Wiley Russell Dam off the table. So if you vote yes, you want to take it off the table. If you vote no, you want to keep it on the table, and we won't deal with it until it comes off the table. And it's a non-debatable motion. Do you have a...
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
If we take it off the table, it means to rebuild the dam, or?
Well, it means that we'll open ourselves up to debate it, and I don't know how that vote would go. If we take it off the table, then we would ultimately be deciding what we're going to do with this expenditure, if we're going to spend it or not. So I hope that explains it. So we'll start with the roll. Why don't we start at precinct 9? I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. We're going to start at precinct 1. No, that's okay. Sorry.
Councilor Sun?
Abstain.
Councilor Burson?
No.
Councilor Alice?
Yes.
Councilor Pyfrom? Yes. Councilor Dolan? Councilor Gilmore?
No.
Councilor Wheeler?
No.
Counselor Mayo?
No.
Counselor Hirschfeld?
No.
Counselor Mass?
No.
Vice President Ricketts?
No.
Counselor Stemple?
No.
President Bruno?
No. Okay, it remains on the table. And we can go back to, so we will not be taking up the Wiley Russell Dam tonight. Okay, number 3, Councilor Gilmore.
Let me just find my page again.
Page 12.
Okay, 12.
Keep asking for it to be taken. We should go there.
The City Council moved that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council amends the Code of the City of Greenfield by adding Chapter 302, minimum wages for employees performing work in the City of Greenfield, Massachusetts Ordinance, which shall become effective on January 1st, 2020, as it's attached here to, and further amends the table of contents and index of contents of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the Code of the City of Greenfield.
Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Report from committee.
So we didn't do this last week. This was actually last month, so I thought we were going to talk about this last month. So it was a positive recommendation, but I know that Councilor Mass was absent, and he may want to talk a little bit about this.
Okay, who's next? Council Wheeler?
I apologize, I wasn't at A&O for the subcommittee discussion. I absolutely support living wage for everyone, including city employees. My question, maybe for anyone, is does specifying a number, a dollar figure of $15, rather than tying it to the state minimum wage, limit its effectiveness to the next year or two?
Councilor Burson is the author of this. Do you want to speak to that?
See why it would.
Councilor Wheeler?
Yeah, just to clarify my question, I guess that state minimum wage will catch up with this resolution in a year or two, and at that point, it will essentially not make this irrelevant, but as inflation, progresses, at some point, the loophole would remain where the city, if it wanted to, could pay less than minimum wage if that happened to be more than $15. If you follow, it's hard to explain.
Well,
Councilor Burson?
I think what you're saying that if the minimum wage in the state was $16 and this was in existence, then the town would only obligate to pay 15, not 16. I don't think that would be the case, because I think the state law would predominate. This when sovereign sets a limit or a wage for another, and the other sovereign puts in a minimum, that doesn't mean that the state wage prevails. What this is an exception to the state minimum wage for a period of time that it exists. Does that help you?
Councilor Wheeler, do you have a follow-up question for Councilor Burson?
Yes, it helps, it clarifies. I just wonder if the ordinance would be more effective if it said something like
a wage less than $15 or state minimum wage, whichever is greater, because to my understanding, there are loopholes that don't require municipal employers to pay state minimum wage, and I would like to close those loopholes.
Well, that's what I thought I was doing.
Councilor Mass.
Councilor Wheeler is exactly correct. This is what I tried to address in subcommittee. I'm sorry I wasn't there on the last date. The effect of this ordinance is between January 20th, 2020 and January 20th, 2023. For a 3-year period of time, minimum wage for municipal employees in Greenfield would exceed the state minimum wage. On January 2023, the minimum wage in Greenfield would be the same as the state minimum wage. And then any subsequent increases to the state minimum wage, the minimum wage in Greenfield would remain at $15 an hour. I had suggested that what would be appropriate is let's just link this to state minimum wage. That resolves the loophole, which is the primary issue. What it does not do is give the relief that Councilor Burson, I believe, wants to give, which is for the next 3 years to raise the minimum wage for municipal employees to $15 an hour. But that is, to answer the question, that's the crux of the problem. And my instinct is it's not easily amendable.
Councilor Ellis.
No, I don't know if Councilor Mass is citing a chapter and section of law or not, but I believe that the only way that we can pay less than minimum wage as a municipality is through a collective bargaining agreement. Is that incorrect? Okay, so that's incorrect. Okay. However, it does, so then that would sort of eliminate the next point that I was going to make, which was that there's a severability clause in this, but if there is in fact a chapter and section of law that would supersede this, then there is definitely a problem with the language, because I would have thought I thought it was collective bargaining agreement was the only way to supersede minimum wage, so I think maybe this should go back to committee to be worked on personally.
Councilor Ricketts, Vice President Ricketts.
Yeah, I believe Mark Smith and Councilor Burson brought us some information to show us all of the employees who were under $15, and I believe it was like cafeteria workers, there were some paras, and then like the rec department when they hire all that help. So it was departments like that. So I don't know what happens to them as a whole, because we already have trouble making their budgets and stuff now, but I guess I'm going to have to agree with Councilor Alice that maybe us go back to committee, because maybe everyone on council didn't get the listing of all the employees who meet, this criteria of why this is even coming forward now. Because I have further questions once we kind of decide if we want to go through with this, because I'm just trying to figure out, just budget-wise, can we actually pull it off? We need to pull it off, but, fiscally, can this be even done? Because it is in departments that it's not negotiations.
Councilor Mass?
In looking at this, I actually think there's an amendment that would meet what I would like, and perhaps, without speaking for him, perhaps what Councilor Wheeler would like. It would likely would not be a friendly amendment, so I'll make it as a regular amendment. And that would be, throughout the document, to strike the words $15 an hour and replace with the state minimum wage.
Okay, the motion to amend has been made and seconded, and that would be to strike $15 an hour throughout the document and replace it with the state minimum wage. And so now we're going to talk about the amendment. Councilor Dolan.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Councilor Burson.
That's not the purpose of this. This came out of the genesis of when I saw the contract that existed between the school department and we were asked to pass on a contract and basically rubber stamp it because it already had been submitted in collective bargaining. It was signed, sealed, and delivered. And I was appalled by the fact that the cafeteria workers were making, in some cases, $11 and $13 an hour. And when I proposed the ordinance at first blush, I proposed it for not for the workers of Greenfield, but for the entire town of Greenfield, that anybody who works in Greenfield would get $15 an hour. So Councilor Mass cautioned me that would probably not work, because why would anybody, do that in order to provide a $15 an hour living wage to somebody who worked in Greenfield? Okay, so I took a compromise position, and he said, well, we could do it for the benefit of the workers, and we have control over the people in Greenfield. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the minimum wage law doesn't apply to cities and towns. It doesn't. So it's not a matter of this is of adopting something, because we don't have to adopt it because we're not bound by it. So this, to me, doesn't help anyone if they're just going to get the minimum wage in Massachusetts. What we need is something to break through, and in order to break through, at a minimum, it has to be $15 an hour. Frankly, I don't feel like $15 an hour is enough. It should be at least $20 an hour. However, I don't want to throw fiscal sanity to the wind and say that we can't do this. But if this works so that for the 2-year period that we're talking about, that the town employees get $15 an hour, that's something that, to me, is very welcoming. This is a good place to work, at least they recognize that there's a living wage here. Maybe this is a community that I want to come to. It's almost like a marketing gimmick in some ways. So that's why I wanted, or the minimum wage is not going to really break through for that 2 years. So I'm trying to get a little bit ahead of the curve here and making a statement that Greenfield is willing and recognizes that, human workers are worth at least $15 an hour.
Councilor Ellis?
I may have missed it. I did see the information that Councilor Ricketts, or Vice President Ricketts, was talking about that came through with the listing. However, did we ever receive a comprehensive breakdown of what it actually will cost per year? Did we?
Councilor Ellis, I do not believe we have, and I'm actually having thoughts myself that this perhaps should go to Ways and Means, and we should have a breakdown of the cost before we take an actual vote, not because by our charter, that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, by charter and by our rules of procedure, we're required to have the financial impact to the town of any ordinance that we pass. So in theory, the other ordinance we passed tonight should have had that as well. But that's beside the point. My concern is, if we don't know what the actual financial impact of making this change is, that could, and it's probably not huge, but I don't know that for a fact, and I'd like to know that. So I think, again, I would suggest that it go back to committee so that we can obtain those pieces of information, as well as maybe it could go to Ways and Means also in the same time period that it's at A&O, so that the different issues could be discussed, or maybe a joint meeting of the two committees.
Councilor Dolan?
So, first of all, I'm absolutely in support of a $15 minimum for town employees. I'm actually in support of it without the exception of people under 18. I'm not in favor of creating two classes of workers in the town workforce. However, I think my main issue with the ordinance as it stands is that it's not a financial matter. We are not appropriating money. We are not paying the workers that we have more. City budgets will remain the same. Department budgets will remain the same. There's no increased funding associated with this. So essentially that means if we're paying our cafeteria workers 40% more, we will end up having 40% fewer cafeteria workers. I don't, unfortunately, trust this council to fund departments appropriately. So I have to look at this ordinance as a pink slip for a number of town employees, unless we can get into a situation where we are actually appropriating more money to fund the positions. So this ordinance, honestly, I would be in favor of it going back to committee or back to a joint Ways and Means and A&O, because I feel like I'm kind of between a rock and a hard place on this one.
Councilor Gilmore?
I was really confused with what you were saying about costs not going up with this at first until you came around and made your point. And that's something that concerns me also, which is why I'm on the one hand, we do want to keep taxes low. On the other hand, we need to pay people a fair wage for the work that they do. And it's hard to balance both of those because this is kind of a, a lower income town compared to some of our neighbors. So for that reason, I would be in favor with tying this to the minimum wage so that we're at least not paying people less than what they would earn at McDonald's to care for our children. And I think that we should probably work that out before we send this off to Ways and Means, because currently it says $15 an hour. The way I thought the conversation was moving as we were discussing this in committee is I thought we were going to come around more towards linking it to the minimum wage. And I was actually surprised when people voted in favor to move it up. So I'm happy to do some more work on this, and if that might mean mediating a little bit, because I do understand, Councilor Burson, I get it. But I am also really concerned about layoffs, like Councilor Dolan brought up, and I think that we really have to take a hard look at that. I mean, I worked really hard with Jobs with Justice to get the $15 minimum wage passed at the state level, and I was upset that they put the brakes on it. So this is something I believe in and I care about and I put a lot of energy into, but we have to do it right, otherwise we're going to hurt people.
Well, I don't really.
Councilor Burson, I have to recognize you first. And councilors, there have been a lot of complaints about the length of the meetings, so I'm going to recommend right now that we have an amendment to the motion. We can't leave this without voting on the amendment to the motion, so I'm going to suggest somebody call the question so we can just vote on the amendment, and then we can probably vote to table.
Point of order.
Councilor Stemple? Then don't complain about how long the meetings take.
Recommendation just, I don't know, we're talking about this motion, and really the point of when our body comes together is not to discuss motions in the way that we're discussing this. It should be sent back to committee. So do we have to answer this and then send it back to committee?
We have to vote on the amendment to the motion first, and that's why I would suggest that somebody can call the question on the amendment instead of tabling it with the amendment not being voted on. And it doesn't matter. It can still come back again with amended or not amended. Councilor Alice?
If the amendment is withdrawn, I think we could send it back to committee.
Does somebody want to withdraw it?
Madam President, I will withdraw the motion, but I just wanted to make a point of order, and hopefully we'll have a parliamentarian here next month who can help you. As president, you can call the question on your own action at any time. You don't require a motion from someone.
Thank you. And did you withdraw? I did. Okay, so let's, is there a motion to table?
Does the second withdraw?
Motion to refer to committee.
Motion to refer to committee, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Okay, thank you. Counselor Gilmore.
Yes. The City Council moved that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Charter, Article 6, Administrative Organization, Section 11, Public Safety Commission, subsection D, Powers and Duties, for paragraph 4, by deleting civil service law and inserting in its place applicable or collective bargaining agreements to read as follows. Do you need me to read the whole thing?
Yes, please.
Section 6-11, Public Safety Commission, D4, period. Final interviews for appointments and promotions of officers and men and women in the police and fire department shall be conducted by the commission and the chief. The chief shall submit his recommendations to the commission, and the commission, if it does not agree with said recommendation, shall submit written reasons for not concurring with said recommendations to the mayor. Appointments and promotions of public safety personnel shall be made in accordance with applicable or collective bargaining agreements and general laws and local hiring policy requirements as defined by the mayor respectively. And that the city council further instructs the city clerk to submit the approved vote to the legislature of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and request said legislature to amend the city charter.
Is there a second? Second. Report from committee?
So we're sending this up to the legislature with the other amendment to the charter, the one for citizen referendum petitions. So we're tabling it for now.
Okay.
And
so the recommendation is to table?
Yes, we're going to send a recommendation to the city council in August.
Okay, so is there a motion to table?
So moved. Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Motion's tabled. 2 noes. 3 noes.
Brigitte, Ashley, Isaac?
Okay. Counselor Gilmore, item 5.
The City Council moved that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council, pursuant to Charter Section 2-10, accepts the following reappointments and appointments by the mayor for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2022. Reappointments are Agricultural Commission, Dr. Robert Sager, and the Conservation Commission, Jonathan Griffin and Erica LaForme. Appointments are to the Board of Health, Jennifer Hoffman, Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee, Hannah Ruckschaffen, Mayor's Domestic Violence Task Force, Elizabeth Kinsman Finn, Public Library Board of Trustees, Samantha Wood.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Report from committee.
Unanimous, positive.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Councilor Wheeler.
All right. Oh, that one works. Move that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council take from the table order number FY 19-108, the sum of $90,000 be appropriated from the Building Maintenance Stabilization Fund for the following purposes and amounts. City Hall brick repairs, $40,000. City Hall chimney repairs, $50,000, which was tabled at the May 22nd, 2019 City Council annual budget meeting.
Is there a second? Okay, so this is to take these items from the table. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, Councilor Wheeler, could you just read the main motion again, just so that we know exactly what we're voting on?
Moved that it be ordered, upon recommendation of Mayor Martin, ordered that the sum of $90,000 be appropriated from the Building Maintenance Stabilization Fund for the following purposes and amounts. City Hall brick repairs, $40,000. City Hall chimney repairs, $50,000.
Okay, is this the report from committee?
Unanimous positive. This is, in my opinion, a crucial safety measure. There are bricks on they've been identified on the roof, as well as the chimney. The ones on the roof are a safety hazard. If we're putting the city, the public, lots of people at risk. We're putting ourselves as counselors at risk of being liable for damages if we don't approve this.
Councilor Stemple?
I'm approving, I am for this. I wish we could give more to kind of maintain our town hall. The doors aren't safe. Every time I leave, I feel like, oh wow, this is not good. We need to protect, I'm tired, sorry. We need to take care of what's ours. And I think of our town hall as our beacon of our town. So I'm gonna support this, and I wish I could give more for all of the repairs that need to be done to upkeep our city hall. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Councilor Sun?
I'll support it as long as we get a good mason that knows how to lay brick and make them stay better.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Who said that? Okay, Councilor Alice opposed. Abstain? Motion carries. Councilor Wheeler?
Move that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council take from the table order number FY 19-110. The sum of $300,000 be appropriated for sewer inflow and infiltration evaluation and repairs, and to meet said appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is hereby authorized to borrow said sum of $300,000 pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 814, or any other enabling statute, and the mayor is hereby authorized to apply for, contract for, accept, and expend any federal and/or state grants or bond premiums available for this project to be used to reduce the appropriation, and further, the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary to carry out the intent and purpose of these projects, which was tabled at the May 22nd, 2019 City Council Annual Budget Meeting.
Motion has been made and seconded to, this is to take from the table. All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Councilor Wheeler, could you just read the motion one more time so we know what we're voting on?
Ordered that the sum of $300,000 be appropriated for sewer inflow and infiltration, evaluation, and repairs. And to meet said appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is hereby authorized to borrow said sum of $300,000 pursuant to MGL Chapter 44, Section 814, or any other enabling statute, and the mayor is hereby authorized to apply for, contract for, accept, and expend any federal and/or state grants or bond premiums available for the project to be used to reduce the appropriation, and further, the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary to carry out the intent and purpose of these projects.
Here's a report from committee.
Unanimous positive. We council did not make the. There's a long-term capital plan that includes regular expenditures towards I&I. The council voted it down last year, and so it's pretty key, we felt, to do it this year. There's already been a lot of progress. I think our DPW has made a lot of progress in reducing the inflow and infiltration, but we need to keep at it.
Councilor Alice?
Thank you, Madam President. In speaking with the director at DPW, I believe so there's now a new appropriation for another $300,000. The initial $300,000 was proposed in the capital budget to meet the first phase of the plan as the DPW director had submitted it, which would be to have an outside firm come in and scope and smoke and fog and camera there's 5 of the 13 sub-basins, right? Is that what it's called? Sub-basin? Yeah. And those 5, as I understand it, were identified as the most likely places that we may have a significant problem. That's not to say that the other 8 don't. It's to say that the first 5 were identified through whatever method was used to identify that may be the highest priority or the highest likelihood. And from what I understand, that was like $285,000, so they put in for $300,000. If we don't vote this and vote the 300,000 that is a repurposing of money that has already been, was in Maple Brook that was not used. That 300,000 could be used to do those first 5 subbasins, which would then allow us to potentially find whatever we're going to find, which could be the lion's share of the problem or no problem at all, which I think everyone highly doubts. But if it was, for example, the lion's share of the problem and could potentially be what fixes the problem to get us to where we need to be on our consent order, which I'm not saying it will do unequivocally, but there is that potential. So what the 300,000 would do from the repurposing is we would not then be bonding another 300,000 to do the work. Because we've already, I believe, bonded the Maple Brook culvert money, and if we haven't, it will be bonded shortly. So it's a way that we can get everything done that was said to us needed to be done without outlaying 600,000 and potentially bonding it and then running into a situation where we're not actually using it either this year or next year. We can get the work done that was submitted to us with this initial 300,000 by taking 300,000 from the repurposing and not having to do both. And that's just a suggestion that I would make, because I'm gonna vote against this one, but vote for the repurposing so that we can get the work done that was proposed to us. It wasn't until sometime between when the capital was sent to us and tonight that there was identified another 300,000. And while that would do phase 1 and 2, we may not have to do 2 just yet if phase 1 proves out to be the significant problem. That's my point. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Stemple, and then Councilor Gilmore, and then Councilor Wheeler.
I'm a visual learner, so in terms of phases, I didn't quite follow, but in terms of the funding later on to identify and create a strategy, I'm all for that. If we vote this down, the money goes away, or will it come back later? And if Counselor, can I have a guess? I'm posing it to whoever has the answer, I guess.
Okay.
It sounds like to Councilor Ellis. He seems to know the answer.
Councilor Ellis, do you want to
I'll give you what I think the answer is. If we vote this one down, this is just an order for an appropriation, which can be done at any point. So if I could just explain the phases. In the plan, there are 2 phases. There was an identification of 5 of the sub-basins, which I guess are areas of town. There's a map that has all of them listed out. And those 5 were targeted in phase 1 as being the highest likelihood that that's where significant problems probably exist. That's not to say, as I said, that the other 8 do not have problems. It's just a lower likelihood that those are where the problems are. So the phase 1 was to target the first most likely problems. Second phase is targeting the second most likely problems. But if you have, a flat tire and you have your phase 1 is to check the sidewall, phase 2 is to check the tread, and you find the hole in the sidewall, you don't then need to check the tread. Is really the point that I'm making in the funding. And the 285,000 funds that first phase of the 5 subbasins, where the problem is most likely to be occurring.
Follow-up question. And so phase 1 is the smoking and the strategy. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
As I understand it.
I'm going to call up the DPW director. I have a question, and Liz as well. You're not getting away with No, you're coming up here too. We need to play do-si-do with the microphones again. Director, could you speak to this appropriation and why you're requesting it, and also speak to what Councilor Alice is saying, Councilor Stempel's questions, and Liz, Director Gilmore, perhaps you could as well.
Okay, thank you. So as we've gone through the budget cycle and capital, things have changed a little bit, I think, in Ways and Means. I had given the information that DEP, under the consent order, and along with that, EPA paid us a visit. So the strategy we needed to come up with as DEP, am I too close? Or?
What number's on that, Mike? Top left-hand side. Top left.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Better for me, too. So as we went through the process and worked with DEP and EPA, we have resubmitted a request to extend our consent order for 2 years. I requested that back in November. And since then, not to restate, EPA came in, and I met with them for 7.5 hours in a day. We have not heard back from them yet. But they have communicated with DEP, and they wanted us to come up with a comprehensive plan, which I think we've mentioned a few times through the process. Last meeting, I kind of laid that comprehensive plan out. We've done study after study after study. Now, the study on the subbasins, and for simplification, we'll call them areas of the town. There was 10 subbasins that were identified under flow testing back in November of 2016 that had significant I&I. So we broke it down into 2 phases. We were going to take the top 5 or 6 subbasins, which is approximately $300,000, to do all the evaluation, which will tell us what we need to fix and where we need to fix it, and recommend what the fixes are. So we've entered phase 2 of that process. We're done studying. We've spent money on studying. We've done some repairs. But now we need to identify where our big problems are coming from. So this would be the first allotment, first phase, and I chose to take the 5 highest identified I&I areas, subbasins in town, with this particular funding. The request to repurpose Maplebrook funding is, as we go, it's going to be identified, and it gives us the opportunity to repair the I&I as we go. My thinking there was, if we wait a year, year and a half, we'll be back at the table with, again, we don't know what EPA is going to demand from us, but we'd be back to the table requesting another extension. But both DEP and EPA has made it really clear that they want us to take appropriate steps and knock this I&I down that is just basically pummeling our wastewater treatment plant every time it rains down there. We're out of permit. So all this has been triggered with what they call the snitch or the SNCC list. It's public record, it's EPA. We have to turn in reports quarterly, biannually, and yearly at the plant of what the inflow is, what we're treating, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to get into the whole biology of it, but we showed up on that list, and I believe that's what triggered EPA to come into the city. So the second appropriation of the $300,000 you'll see later on, or the repurposing, is so that we can actually identify with this $300,000, and then we can take the other $300,000 and we can start repairing immediately. Does that answer?
I believe that's pretty clarifying. Councilor Stempel, do you have a question?
And so what you're saying is you need this money. You're only asking for what you need, right, to get this process started?
Right. I mean, it takes time. We start identifying. We need to show the appropriate steps that we're starting to eliminate this. The numbers need to go down at our plant.
Councilor Dolan?
Thank you for the explanation. I'm absolutely in favor of giving you what you need to do your job. I've learned a lot about I&I this last year and a half. Just a question about the language. So what we have from Ways and Means today is approved $300,000 for repurpose and repair of Maplebrook culvert. And that tells me that it's the culvert that's being repurposed and not the money. It's on the Ways and Means agenda. It just says that. So if it's actually the money that we're repurposing, do we need to do that?
But it's not the financial ordinance.
This is just what's on our agenda.
This is the first reading.
Yeah, I think it's just a synopsis of not the full order. So I don't think the full, what was submitted, I think it got condensed down.
Well, my question is, if that's inaccurate and it's the money that's being repurposed and not the culvert, do we need to do another first reading? Because, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't get where I
So that could, to folks in the room who deal with first readings, that's a potential issue.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yes.
I believe we have a mechanism that we can fix that.
good.
So, any other questions while we have the directors up here? No, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Are we ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Councilor Wheeler.
Move that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council take from the table order number FY 19-145, the sum of $550,000 be appropriated for the Sewer Enterprise Fund portion of the water meter replacement program, and to meet said appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is hereby authorized to borrow said sum of $550,000 for this, with repayment from the Sewer Enterprise Fund pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, or any other enabling statute, and the mayor is hereby authorized to apply for, contract for, accept, and expend any federal and/or state grants or bond premiums available for this project to be used to reduce the appropriation, and further, the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary to carry out the intent and purpose of these projects, which was tabled at the May 22nd, 2019 City Council Annual Budget Meeting.
Okay, this is a motion to take this item off the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It comes off the table. One more time, Councilor Wheeler, just so we know what we're voting on.
Move that it be ordered the sum of $550,000 be appropriated for the Sewer Enterprise Fund portion of the water meter replacement program. And to meet said appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is hereby authorized to borrow said sum of $550,000 for this, with repayment from the Sewer Enterprise Fund pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, or any other enabling statute. And the mayor is hereby authorized to apply for, contract for, accept, and expend any federal and/or state grants or bond premiums available for this project to be used to reduce the appropriations, and further, the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary to carry out the intent and purpose of these projects.
What is the report from committee?
Unanimous positive. This saves the city money, or it will. I believe the Director Warner estimated that it would save $250,000 per year. The water meter replacement program would enable a city to read the meters in about 3 days, and right now it takes almost an entire month. So I believe the city could save about $30,000 just in labor alone. So the subcommittee recommends.
Councilor Ellis?
So the water and sewer rates have risen in the last 2 years, double-digit increases both years, with the proposed 10% increase this year. I would argue that this does not save the town $250,000. This generates the town $250,000. The issue, as I understand it, is that the water meters are not registering the amount of water correctly to the low side. How much? I spoke with the director today. They don't know how much to the low side that this is, that these are down. So they don't know how much is going to be generated because there's no percentage of how much water it's not reading. So the issue that I have is it's not a critical fix that we need to make immediately, and the rates have been increased double digits on that false data. So if you look at the fact that we have raised the rates on the lower amount of usage, once you change the meters and meter whatever the percentage is, which apparently nobody can say, you then increase the rate even further, and it exponentially increases what the ratepayers are paying, because if you use 1,000 cubic feet or 1,000 cubic, however they measure the water usage, at $10, and then the meter's off by 15%, and you're actually using 1,150, now you're paying the higher rate on that extra 150 gallons, or 150 cubic feet of water. So this literally is going to increase what you pay for water and sewer, because it's out of both water and sewer. There's two different portions. And I don't believe that that's something that we should do without knowing what the effect is going to be on that bill for the ratepayers when it comes down. We should know what the percentage, we should at least have a good idea of what the percentage is that we are not capturing with the old meters, so that people can understand and know what they're going to be paying when they replace the meter and see a huge spike because the rate's already gone up, and now water usage is going to change to the upside, because that's the whole point of doing this. So I can't vote for this because I don't have enough information on what this is going to actually do to the ratepayers.
Councilor Gilmore?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Director Warner has a lot of very talented employees who I'm sure have done their homework on this, and I don't understand how water meters are going to impact the ratepayers or the taxpayers, but I fully trust that our workers at the DPW do, and this is the recommendation that they gave to us. I don't think they're trying to hurt anybody. I think this is what they believe we need, and I think that we should trust them and support that.
Councilor Dolan?
I just want to say that if it were possible to estimate how much water we're not metering, then we wouldn't need the new meters. It's impossible for us to know until we have an accurate metering system. Personally, I do my best to save water and electricity and other resources, and I would like that to be accurately reflected on my water bill. Water is a resource just like gasoline, just like food, and people should be paying for what they use. It's a limited resource. I don't like the idea that there might be someone getting a much bigger discount who's using a lot more water in town than I am. This seems to make sense. If we end up bringing a lot more revenue, maybe we can lower those water rates. That would be a great outcome.
Councilor Sun?
Could we have Mr. Warner come up and
Thank you again. The one thing that wasn't mentioned that I've talked about through the process, and we just completed one of the other capital projects that's going to help us with this. All the flow meters were replaced along with the Millbrook rehab project. We had some flow meters replaced. So I want to speak a little bit about unaccounted for water, which I've talked about many times through the process since spring. So with the new flow meters of what we're producing, potable, drinkable water, those meters are now completely accurate, they're new. We know what we're producing each day, and then we know what we're using through our revenues and whatnot. So what we know right now is we got an unaccounted for water, last I checked, was somewhere around 27%. So DEP, through the sanitary surveys and through regulation, the goal is for every community to be at 10%. I can explain it like any other utility. They change your gas meter every 10 to 15 years for a reason. They wear out. The utility loses money for the product they're producing. The unaccountable water, it's not only losing revenues, but it's also, it's dictated to us by DEP from that aspect too. So if you do the 24% of the 26% against your revenues, that kind of tells you what you're losing. Now, you're not losing, the only way we can give you an exact number is to pull every meter in the city, test it, put it back in. That would be an extreme cost. I will say that the larger meters in town, they're 40 to 50 years old. I think we have 8 of them. Most of them are estimated at this point because they haven't worked in years. So there's no way of giving you a number. I will give you an example. There was a large meter about 4 years ago. We found what they call, it was a compound meter. The low side wasn't working. You got a high pressure side, low pressure side. And it was a large building, large water user, and that meter alone was losing $21,000 a year. So, you know, a much lower rate at the residential level, but again.
Councilor Sun, you requested the director come up. Do you have a specific question, or did this suffice?
Just giving an overlay of what exactly, so everybody would understand and not have to go make up their own minds without the proof.
Okay. And somebody who has not spoken to the issue, or does somebody have a question of the directors? Councilor Alice.
So the meters that you do have that you were able to ascertain what the percentage was is 20, you said 24%?
I made the comparison of what we produce for drinking water,
yes, rather
each
comparison.
day.
So if we can't account for, did you say 24%?
Last time I checked, I believe it was 26, 27. We were in the mid to upper 20s. I haven't looked at it recently.
So if we can't account for 26 or 27% of the water that we produce, and that water is going into the homes and businesses and everything else, then there's a potential for that spike on new meters to residents and their bills of 26 to 27%.
Yes, there's a potential on that, but we're also looking at our aged infrastructure. There could be leaks out there, and that can help us also. Once we know our meters are accurate, then, I mean, we do leak testing all the time, but, I mean, we know we're losing water out in the ground, so to speak, with the pipes, so.
Councilor Dolan.
I'd like to call the question.
Okay. Is that second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the question is being called. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. 2. Councilor Python? You're a no, right? Okay. And Councilor Alice? Motion carries. Thank you. Councilor Wheeler?
Move that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council take from the table order number FY19-113. The sum of $675,000 be appropriated for the replacement of the Leiden Woods pumping station. And to meet said appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is hereby authorized to borrow said sum of $675,000 pursuant to MGL Chapter 44 or any other enabling statute. And the mayor is hereby authorized to apply for, contract for, accept, and expend any federal and/or state grants or bond premiums available for this project to be used to reduce the appropriation, and further, the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary to carry out the intent and purpose of these projects, which was tabled at the May 22nd, 2019 City Council Annual Budget Meeting.
Motion has been made and seconded, and this is just to take off the table, which is non-debatable. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So the motion is taken off the table. Councilor Wheeler, could you just read it one more time?
Move that it be ordered that the sum of $675,000 be appropriated for the replacement of the Leiden Woods Pumping Station. And to meet said appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is hereby authorized to borrow said sum of $675,000 pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, or any other enabling statute, and the mayor is hereby authorized to apply for, contract for, accept, and expend any federal and/or state grants or bond premiums available for this project to be used to reduce the appropriation, and further, the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary to carry out the intent and purpose of these projects.
Report from committee.
Unanimous positive.
Any debate, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Councilor Wheeler.
Move that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council take from the table order number FY19-147. The sum of $30,000 be appropriated for the replacement of the Greenfield Middle School playground equipment. And to meet said appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is hereby authorized to borrow said sum of $30,000 for this pursuant to MGL Chapter 44 or any other enabling statute, and the mayor is hereby authorized to apply for, contract for, accept, and expend any federal and/or state grants or bond premiums available for this project to be used to reduce the appropriation, and further, the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary to carry out the intent and purpose of these projects, which was tabled at the May 22nd, 2019 City Council annual budget meeting.
Okay. So this is to take off the table. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion is off the table. Could you read it one more time, Councilor Wheeler?
One more time. Ordered that the sum of $30,000 be appropriated for the replacement of the Greenfield Middle School playground equipment, and to meet said appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is hereby authorized to borrow said sum of $30,000 for this pursuant to MGL Chapter 44 or any other enabling statute, and the mayor is hereby authorized to apply for, contract for, accept, and expend any federal and/or state grants or bond premiums available for this project to be used to reduce the appropriation, and further, the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary to carry out the intent and purpose of these projects.
And the report from committee?
It was unanimous positive at the time. I'm not entirely, I actually wish that I had asked Adrian or our superintendent while they were here, because I had some questions about this, but we did give it a positive recommendation.
Is there any other discussion for playground equipment? Councilor Sutton.
Yeah, I just wondered how swings and stuff like that are $30,000. That's an awful expensive swing set.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Could you, could the noes raise their hands? One no. Councilor Wheeler. Abstain? Motion carries. One abstention. Motion carries. Councilor Wheeler.
Move that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council take from the table order number excuse me, we already read this. I'm going to move to the next one. Move that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council take from the table order number FY19-123, the sum of $600,000 be appropriated for the Water Enterprise Fund portion of the water meter replacement program. And to meet said appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is hereby authorized to borrow said sum of $600,000 for this, with repayment from the Water Enterprise Fund, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, or any other enabling statute. And the mayor is hereby authorized to apply for, contract for, accept, and expend any federal and/or state grants or bond premiums available for this project to be used to reduce the appropriation, and further, the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary to carry out the intent and purpose of these projects, which was tabled at the May 22nd, 2019 City Council annual budget meeting.
Motion's been made and seconded to take from the table the $600,000. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It's off the table. Councilor Wheeler, I won't make you read it again. What was we know what's going on. What was the recommendation from the committee?
Unanimous positive. This is the Water Enterprise Fund's portion of the water meter replacement program, which was just approved in the other, it's shared between water.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Councilor Alice and Pfeiffer. Noes and abstain. No abstentions. Motion carries. Councilor Wheeler.
Move that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council take from the table order number FY19-124. The Greenfield City Council appropriate the amount of $150,000 to purchase installation-related equipment for GSET expansion and customer installation. And to meet said appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is hereby authorized to borrow said sum of $150,000 pursuant to MGL Chapter 44, Section 814 or any other enabling statute, and the mayor is hereby authorized to apply for, contract for, accept, and expend any federal and/or state grants or bond premiums available for this project to be used to reduce the appropriation. And further, the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary to carry out the intent and purpose of these projects, which was tabled at the May 22nd, 2019 City Council annual budget meeting.
Okay, this is to take from the table the GSET money. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It's off the table. What was the report from the committee, Councilor Wheeler?
Unanimous positive. We consider this money essential to GSET's continued expansion across the city, which I hear from constituents all the time that they would love to have it in their neighborhood, and this money is necessary for them to get there.
Councilor Alice?
I have a question, and I don't know if Director Gilman can answer it or not. There was some certified retained earnings in GSET that came in after this measure was placed to us, and I'm just curious how much those retained earnings were and if they plan to use those as a method to get to the installation of this equipment.
We actually, well, I'll start with what the amount was. It was $141,897, but we actually voted that at the June 27th meeting, where we had voted other free cash articles to use toward the 19 operating budget. So I just want to make it, that's where it.
Okay, I was not at that meeting, so I was not aware that that money had already been expended. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Councilor Son?
Yeah, I just, I wished, John was here, because I wanted to know how far they've expanded, how far, what side of town and how much this extra money will help them expand. Whether it'll go both ends of town or...
I actually can tell you that they are planning to go down Bernardston Road further to, just about the industrial park, I think. And then also be able to shoot off of that to some of the side roads. No? Yeah, thank you.
I'm actually looking for it at my house, so I did talk to the director. They are working their way up Bernardston Road to the 7th Street area was the plan, across 7th Street to Barton Road, then down Country Club Road, et cetera, et cetera. It was, I don't want to speak to the financial end of it, but it was the most sensible way financially is how I understood it, but that I do know.
Councilor Sund, I will make sure that the director of GSET is at the next meeting. He's now just coming with an invitation, so that he can talk to us about this.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other discussion? I'm actually going to ask for a raise of hands because I just want to make sure we get this right. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Councilor Wheeler.
Ordered that the sum of $460,000 be appropriated for the replacement of the heating system in Green River schools. And to meet said appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is hereby authorized to borrow said sum of $460,000 pursuant to MGL Chapter 44 or any other enabling statute. And the mayor is hereby authorized to apply for, contract for, accept, and expend any federal and/or state grants or bond premiums available for this project to be used to reduce the appropriation, and further, the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary to carry out the intent and purpose of these projects.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Report from committee.
We did not vote to make a recommendation because we wanted to hear from the school committee and the superintendent during their communications to committee.
Okay. Councilor Stemple?
While I agree that eventually we should replace the heating system, I just don't feel comfortable allocating almost $500,000 to a building that doesn't have a plan. The strategy in my mind should be, let's come forth with an idea of what we want to do with the building, and then we provide services to the building. So I'm not going to support this at this time.
Councilor Gilmore?
Yeah, I had a similar concern because I thought we had pretty solid plans in place. I do want to know if Director Warner could speak to this at all. Do you know how long this would take? Or is the DPW doing this, or is this being contracted out?
It would be contracted.
Yes.
So do we have any idea how long that would take, or?
Well, it has to go out to bid again, because they changed the specs of the heating system. But know that there isn't a heating system in there.
Right.
So it's a building without a heating system, which isn't good.
Right.
And whether you want to use it for school, or even if you wanted to sell it, you would want a heating system in it.
Yeah, and I have a follow-up, if that's okay?
Okay.
And please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is if we're not using this building as a school building, we're going to lose some money that the state gave us, correct?
$1,082,000 in MSBA reimbursement. So if we don't use it, we can repay $1,082,000.
And what's the time frame on that?
Well, I'm sure they will give us, well, they already extended a year, but I'm sure they'll be fine with another year. The purpose, though, is they gave us that money so it would be used as a school building. And so that's...
Councilor Dolan?
I just want to say I agree with Councilor Stemple on this one. I'm uncomfortable funding it without a plan. I'd also like to add that we as a council make the process of planning very difficult for the school committee when we do the budget process, the school budget process, like we have done in the last couple of years. I would really like to move to a place where we can help them plan long-term. I know that they had a plan for that building and that plan essentially got axed because of the mayor's budget process and our budget process. So I'm not going to be voting for this tonight. I would make a motion to table.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Who said no? Okay. Abstain? Motion to table carries. It is tabled. Presentation of petitions and similar papers. Again, it's another long meeting night. I'd just as soon skip over report of committees, unless anybody has anything really pressing. No, okay. Unfinished business, old business. New business, we have some first readings, and Councilor Son.
I have a reading here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
It says, President Reno is in charge of this meeting. We have to listen to the president because she's the one that helps make the decisions. Be respectful to those sitting there as counselors. The people who we represent in our precincts are the ones we are to everyone in the town. The people here, as well as the people on TV, like to see us respect each other. And we need to listen, and when President Reno gives us the okay to talk, we talk, and we wait until she gives an okay to repeat any other questions. And that's only the respect for all of the counselors and our president, too.
Thank you, Councilor Son. Well said. New business is the first reading, and there's the matter that Councilor Dolan had pointed out that there's a wording error, and I'm wondering if we could just read it with the correct wording, if that would count as the first reading. We don't have, I don't think we have an answer to that. Do you have Geneva, do you have a recommendation of what we should do about the wording issue? No. So read it as is? Well, we read it as is. We'll figure it out later.
City Council first reading, July 15th, 2019. Appropriate $26,693.06 in provision with new contract agreement with Greenfield Public Schools. Approve $300,000 for repurpose and repair of Maplebrook Culvert.
Thank you. Motions for reconsideration? Motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? This meeting is adjourned.
All of our productions at GCTV are sponsored in part by Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. Visit them at gcc.mass.edu. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. Real Cleaning Services, cleaning Hampshire and Franklin County since 1972. We don't cut corners, we clean them. Check them out online at realclean.com. Call them at 413-422-1143. People's United Bank, located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. The Solar Store of Greenfield, replacing fossil fuels and nuclear power one home at a time. Visit them at 23 Fisk Ave. Call them at 413-772-3122 or visit them online at solarstoreofgreenfield.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all of GCTV's productions.
Yeah!